Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Venkatakrishnan.
So myself,
Good morning.
Dr. Paul, Satish Kumar, and Nirupama are here in this conference called Rohini.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And it is put through YouTube and Facebook also, and more than 1,000 people will be watching from that also, from our link and website directly, without interacting.
Okay.
And with interacting, 1,500 people directly link is sent, and around 1,560 people or 1,600 people are supposed to join. It will be a half-day session. Okay, sir.
And
Narayana Murthy is now joined, who is the one speaker from BSSC.
Namaste, sir. Namaste to all of you.
Yeah, namaste.
Namaste, sir.
Namaste.
Good morning.
Timeline to 12:30
Yeah.
or 10 to 1:30?
Sir, it is 10 to 1. 10 to 1.
Okay.
But it may all step to 1:30. We have kept cushion up to 1:30.
Okay.
10 to 1 actually the instead up to 10 to 1 designed, and some interactions may take a little more time sometimes. So we are allowing up to 10:30.
All right.
Sorry, 1:30. 1:30. Also joining from already joined, sir. Professor and Head and Center Studies Resource Engineering IIT Bombay also is joining for his remarks on this particular thing from an academia representation.
Yeah, Professor Porto.
Good morning, Kiran Kumar sir. It's
good morning.
a privilege to be meeting you. I am
Good morning.
from IIT Bombay.
Yeah, I know. We have met, I think, in IIT.
Yeah. Last time you came in our this thing. Graduate. Yeah.
How are you doing? How is Bombay?
Well, Bombay is just getting a little bit worse these days, the COVID situation, but campus is still fine. We are having online teaching and the research is continuing.
Students are fully available in the campus now, or still only partial?
Not so, only partial. So we got about 25 to 30% strength, and we have got most of the PhD students back on the campus, and there are some master's students and some bachelor students. But the teaching is still online, sir.
Okay. Everywhere in the country, situation seems to be worsening.
Yeah, it's the second wave, which actually I think we are just a couple of months behind Europe. So they went through their second wave, and now we are going into our second wave.
Right.
Sir, your video is on, no, sir, Kiran Kumar, sir?
Yeah, my video is on. Are you seeing or not?
Oh, you are not seeing. That's what we got it out. Seeing that it is on only as per your icon.
Actually,
it's on.
Initially it came, sir. After that, no, we are not seeing you.
Yeah.
Now you are put off now. All others can put the video off then. Any bandwidth problem is there, no, at least. Yeah.
Hi, good morning. Can you see me?
Good morning,
Can you
madam.
hear me?
Good morning, Swati. Good morning.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Fine. Hope you are doing fine.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Good morning,
Yes,
Swati.
madam.
How are you?
Good morning, sir. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Very good to
So
see you.
yeah, you are visible. You are visible now, sir. Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Okay, sir. Yeah. Another 5 more minutes are there to 10.
Yeah, sure.
The starting we'll do on time. We thought, no, because some more people may join sometimes.
Sure.
Hello? Hello? हाँ अरे कौन मान रहे हैं मैं अभी मीटिंग चल रही है इसरो के साथ
Can we start? Can we? Sir, all our regional academic centers, uh, respond coordinators and people respond to PIs and co-PIs in our center as well as in participating institutions and STCs and STICs, incubation centers and innovation centers and Jammu Kashmir, our Satish Dhawan Center for Space Research, what we have started right now. From everywhere, people are joining all across the country. And
Very good.
lot of students, a lot of our own people, ISRO people also from various centers, and it is being live streamed in ISRO intranet and our net also, and web. More than 600 people are already joined in Facebook or online directly. So this has created a lot of enthusiasm. Hopefully, this will end up in number of papers, quality and quantity, visibly after this in 1 or 2 couple of years to come. We'll have some more such with various other publishers and other people also from various other institutes also such programs in between with bringing novelty. And we will go into specifics after some time. Sir, case studies separately, review articles separately, research articles separately. Like that, we will go into specializations in this publication itself separately into after some time after opening out.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Probably one of the things you could also look at is reviewing
Yes,
articles. It could be one day's
Yeah.
topic or one of the topics.
Yeah, that all, and we will have one specific thing for reviewers alone. How to review, do the quality reviewing, what is the purpose of review, how to effectively review, and the seriousness of that. How to get into that circle of editors and the reviewers, peer reviewers, and how to get into a professional reviewer, an editor, a journal editor, and all these things, so that more people can be. And all these things are coming as parameters of evaluation of the particular institute in world ranking as well as in QS ranking as well as in our NARF ranking. So it's very paramount important. It's getting 33% weightage out of 1.33 weightage we are getting on this. And many of the institutes are lacking in this and dropping in the ranking system just because of this. The other many things are constant, sir. I've seen because student to staff ratio and all we can't do play much. There is only so we are live now already, sir. So
Okay.
2-3 minutes we start. So these are the things what we are having in mind in future also to this kind of webinars, so that it be useful to the student community as well as academic community, sir.
Yeah, that's good. Actually, as part of capacity building within the organization, also this will be beneficial, and
Definitely.
probably should also pursue that from that point of view.
Definitely, sir. Thank you so much. We'll wait now another 2 minutes and start, sir.
All right.
1 minute. Okay. Now this is already gone live now. People are watching. Almost 10 now. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. So shall we start with your permission, sir? Can we go ahead?
Yeah, please go ahead.
So good morning to all of you today who is attending this workshop from ISRO and Capacity Building Program Office, workshop on scientific writing. You are all aware that the importance of scientific writing and bringing out good quality published papers in peer-reviewed journals, apart from presenting it in conferences and bringing chapters in edited books and publishings in the country, in the international arena now. And you are aware that in the last 1 decade, lot of parameters have been brought out to quantify the quality of these papers, like H factor, impact factor, citations, number of citations, same paper being cited by so many people in a couple of months, like that, and during a period, and the interest generated by the paper, even after 1 or 2 years, after some time after publication also, not as a new paper, as a paper available in the archives also, people are searching for that, and the thing means it has got different value for all these things. So all these things have become parameters of evaluation of the quality of the papers now. So those who are in already publishing should be aware of these parameters to how to improve the quality of their paper. That is first and foremost thing. Second thing is to see that those who are not into publishing at all, how to start writing a paper, how to get into writing, quality writing, how to get it published by the right journal. Right journal publishing also is very important, because the people, the audience, the readers who are writing, who are going through that journal should be the targeted audience and readers. That is very, very important actually. If you publish in a wrong journal, your paper may not get much citations. So the targeted, exactly the point where you are focusing should be matching with the area domain expertise of the journal also. Then only more numbers of people read and search for that paper and cite that paper. And more number of citations you are getting, more number of people are endorsing your research work. That also is very important actually. So these are all things which we need to know how to bring in quality papers. And moreover, in any of the NIRF ranking or QS ranking worldwide also, now you are aware that QS young 50 institutions are there, not apart from the world ranking. Asian subcontinent rankings are there, country level rankings are there. Each one of that, you should know what is the kind of parameters they're looking for, publications and peer reviews and quantified papers, and what kind of H factor and impact factor they're looking for. All these things you are knowing only means you can improve the ranking of your institute and the kind of quality of papers, as well as the country's qualification index as well, totally. So to bring out all these kind of facts to some kind of a discussion mode and doubt clearing mode, we have arranged this particular workshop for 2 hours, right? 3 hours right now, 1.5 hours and 1.5 hours. The first half is how to write a scientific paper by SVS Naranamurthy, and second half is how to publish scientific paper by Swati Maharshi, Editorial Director, Applied Science and Engineering, Springer. So for this program, rightfully we have got our Kiran Kumar sir to inaugurate this workshop today, who is well known in the country, who is very well known to all of you. I welcome you, sir, for this particular workshop, and also to deliver the inaugural speech after some time. And another speaker today, notable speaker today, is from the academic community, Professor Alok Porwal, Professor and Head Center for Studies and Resource Engineering, IIT Bombay. He is consented to give his remarks on this particular event, and maybe his expertise and his advice on how to bring it, how to take it forward in the years to come with his own modifications, what he seems to suggest on this kind of workshop right now we are conducting. That also will welcome, sir. I wholeheartedly welcome you for this particular event. And I also welcome the participants and the speakers, Dr. Naranamurthy and Swati Maharshi, and here my colleagues are also here, Sadish Kumar, Nirupama, and Dr. Paul, who is the main brain behind this particular event. I welcome all of them, and more importantly, I welcome all the lively participants who has enthusiastically participated in this program to make it a very, very grand success. Thank you in advance, and anticipating fruitful discussions after this And I welcome once again you, sir, and welcome you for the inaugural speech.
Thank you,
Kumar, sir.
Venkat Yeah, thank you, Venkat Krishnan. At the outset, let me compliment the Capacity Building Program Office at ISRO for coming up with such a program which involves people from all the regional academic centers, then our space technology cells, space technology incubation centers, those who are participating in the response, and also a lot of people from the organization itself. And also we have with us Dr. Podwal, Dr. Narayan Muswami, and Swati, who are going to give their views and also how the activity can be done through this workshop. Today we are all aware that India is on the threshold, and it's on the threshold of gaining its rightful place in this world. And if that has to happen in scientific and technological area, one of the key things is in the space technology domain, where we are looking at how India can actually become a very significant player in the space economy. And if in the space economy, India has to play a role, lot of new research, lot of new innovative solutions and findings have to happen. Not only are these things required for the actual developments, but also we need that all these developments are communicated effectively. Today, it's really important that we learn the process of communicating what we are doing and communicating effectively, both in speaking as well as in writing. And what is being attempted today is a right step. And so let me once again compliment both the organizers of this event and all of you participants, because today definitely you have realized that it is important for you to learn the tricks of the trade and then get to know the details of how to do research and how to do effective communication. As you are very familiar, world is progressing at such a fast pace. Today you have already had Elon Musk trying to make the human species an interplanetary species, and then you have a large number of private enterprises across the globe trying to build in the space tourism, space adventure, and also space exploitation of resources. And in all this, there is a tremendous need for learning new things, creating new ways of doing things, and also building new capabilities. And it is in this context that ISRO is trying to engage with the various technology centers, incubation centers, and also through Respond, it is trying to solicit and also enable more and more people in the country to work and contribute in this area. And while all this happens with the availability of the budgets and with the availability of right set of people working on these areas, it's also very important to understand that unless you are able to very effectively communicate what you have done and make your research work known to people through appropriate mediums like journals, we will not be getting the due recognition that is needed. That was the key point which Dr. Venkatakrishnan was also trying to mention. But each one of you are quite familiar in your own areas that unless you are able to actually effectively bring together the important points of your work and then showcase them to the audience, you have to plan your presentation for the right audience. What is good for one audience may not be appropriate for another audience. So that's also important. So in all these aspects, today, if you look at the analytical studies, whatever is there is taking such a big role. That means in trying to find an effective solutions to a complex problem, people are trying to break down this problem into smaller and smaller issues and in each issue you can independently solve, but then you can put together all of them like a jigsaw puzzle and then get the entire solution. And if this kind of analytical approach, or again today if you look at the tremendous potential what the computation has brought in, whether it is machine learning, what earlier days human beings had to sweat out in trying to read through and then make their sense out of pattern recognition or their intuitive methods of extracting information. Today, computers enable you to do many of these things even without getting into such nitty-gritties. But then you have to compete with such things, and if you have to compete with such things, only the knowledge of how these mechanisms work and how you can make use of these tools to your benefit, unless you learn that, you will fall way behind, and it's like a high speed bus traveling and you are asked to catch the bus running and catch that. So unless you train yourself very efficiently, this will become more and more difficult. And it is in this context, again, I should really compliment both Narayan Swami as well as Maharshi for taking their time out to explain to all of you what is involved and how you can do your activities for your benefit. And let me compliment each one of you for participating in this program, and then remind you that you are on a path to glorious success, both with the efforts of what you are going to do in conducting research and then making whatever research you have done, innovations you have done, findings you have done to others through an effective means. And let me wish this particular program a grand success, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak about this and remind you that you are on the threshold of a great Indian surge in the international arena. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. It was an inspirational speech, and you have brought out the importance of all the activities right now, what we are doing, and how to take it forward to see that India is coming to glory in the years to come. And let me invite Professor Alok Porwal for his remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Venkatakrishnan. Shri Kiran Kumar sir, Dr. Venkatakrishnan sir, distinguished speakers, Dr. Narayan Murthy and Swati Maharshi, and the course participants. I thank ISRO and Dr. Paul in particular for giving me this opportunity of sharing my thoughts with you. Scientific communication, we know, is of two types. One, oral presentation of one's scientific results, generally in meetings and conferences. And second, written communication of one's results for peer review and publications in journals. Clearly, the latter type of communication is more important as it involves committing our research in writing, which will be read, analyzed and evaluated by posterity for years to come. It's something that grants our work immortality. It is therefore important that our research communications are well argued and clearly articulated. My experience in editorial boards of international journals is that a well-written and well-organized paper with not so strong scientific content is more likely to be accepted than a poorly written paper with much better scientific content. This is a human bias that all reviewers have. We appreciate what we can understand clearly and easily, and we do not appreciate what is presented in an obscure manner, irrespective of the content. The papers published in Nature and Science, which are paragons of scientific achievements, are invariably written so well and therefore are so easy to understand that even lay people can understand them and appreciate their scientific content. However, it is not just about creating a favorable impression on the reviewer and editor. Writing is an integral part of scientific research. We cannot separate it as a matter of form or technical skill as opposed to the scientific content, which is supposedly the soul of a paper. In my opinion, we start doing real science when we start writing our results and discussing them in well-argued sentences. I always tell my students that data processing and analysis and getting results is the easy part. The tough part is putting them down on the paper. That is when we are forced to become self-critical and we are forced to objectively analyze the logic of our algorithms, methods, and assumptions. Particularly the discussion section, which I think is the soul of a paper, where we make sense of our results and we support our interpretations with well-articulated and well-substantiated arguments. All of us learn this truth the hard way. Most beginners think that the day they get a result, they have a paper. No, the paper is several months or sometimes even years away. My PhD supervisor, Professor Martin Hale, used to say that the only way to learn to write papers is to read them. I think there is another way, which is easier, to be trained by experienced researchers and publishers like Dr. Murthy and Ms. Mahershi. I must say that this is a huge opportunity provided by ISRO for young researchers, particularly PhD scholars and postdoctoral fellows, to hone their scientific communication skills. I'm sure the participants will make the most of this opportunity. I once again thank ISRO for giving me this opportunity of talking to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for addressing the audience with an apt message suitable to this occasion. So thank you once again, sir. And now I think we can move on to the technical session. And for the first presentation by SVS Narayanamurthy. So I request Dr. Sri Sadish Kumar to just introduce this first speaker.
Respected A.S. Kiran Kumar sir, former Secretary DOS, Dr. P.V. Venkatakrishnan, Director CBPO, ISRO Headquarters, Professor Alok Potwal sir, today's speaker, my dear colleagues, attendees, good morning to one and all. Now I'd like to introduce Dr. SVS Narayanamurthy. Sir, Dr. SVS Narayanamurthy is with Vikram Sarabhai Space Center, Trivandrum, ISRO. He has obtained his PhD from IIT Bombay and he was a postdoctoral fellow at the National Institute for Material Science, Tsukuba, Japan. He works on materials for space applications and has conducted research in multiple areas of aerospace materials processing, microstructure control and characterization, ultra-fine grained materials, metallurgical failure analysis. He has an ample and multidisciplinary view of space materials research. In recognition of his contribution, he has received many awards and rewards. Few of them are: he has received a Young Metallurgical Award during 2001 and Metallurgist of the Year 2018 by Ministry of Steel, Government of India. AIDA Technology Innovation Award by Japan Society for Technology of Plasticity. He has also received. He was a member of the ISRO Team Excellence Award for indigenation of copper alloy for cryogenic and semi-cryogenic engines. Mr. Murthy has edited 8 conference proceedings and special issues, 6 review articles in international journals, and has contributed to encyclopedia. He has published more than 200 contributions in over 57 peer-reviewed journals through his career of 28 years of research. Dr. Murthy is on the editorial boards of ASTM Journal of Materials Performance and Characterization, published by American Society for Testing of Materials. Transactions of the Indian Institute of Metals, published by Springer. He was also the editorial board of Encyclopedia of Aluminum Alloys, published by Taylor and Francis. Dr. Narayanamurthy is a life member of the Indian Institute of Metals, Materials Research Society of India and the Aeronautical Society of India. Thank you, sir. You can proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Satish Kumar, for your nice words of introduction. Am I audible and clear?
Right.
Yeah. Most respected Kiran Kumar sir, former Chairman ISRO, Venkatakrishnan sir, Director CBPO, Professor Alok Porwal, Professor at IIT Bombay, Ms. Swati Maharshi, Editorial Director Springer, Dr. M.A. Paul, and colleagues at CBPO office at ISRO headquarters, faculty members and students from across the country who have joined. I am seeing the chat box.
So large number of people have joined. A very warm good morning to all of you. It gives me immense pleasure to be with all of you this morning and talk to you on how to write a scientific paper in this event organized by Capacity Building Program Office. And my screen is visible?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you. The architecture of my presentation is going to be something like this. I have prepared the first 10 slides of my presentation would be on why this lecture and why to write a scientific paper at all and why it matters where you publish and are you ready to really write a basic a scientific paper and what are the basic principles before you write. What do really reviewers expect from your paper? So if you know a priori, it will be immensely beneficial for us. And what are the types of manuscripts and how to select the right journal and what you should do before you start preparing a manuscript. This 10 slides I will be initially talking about. This is something like warming up to the presentation or a pre-processing stage. And then this is followed by next 25 slides on how to really actually write a scientific paper. This is the crux of this presentation, followed by slides related to submission of the manuscript. And finally we'll take away from this presentation. And it will take about an hour, this presentation, and I hope this presentation will help you in better understanding on preparation of manuscripts. So now let's go into the presentation. Why this lecture? Excellent work is being done in India. If you look at the 2018 statistics on the number of scientific papers that were produced in the world, China stands with 5.28 lakh scientific papers in the first position, followed by United States of America with 4.22 lakh publications. We stand in the third position with 1.35 lakh scientific publications. Of course, followed by Germany and other countries. Now, if you look at, we are 1/4 of number of papers published by China and 1/3 approximately of the papers published by United States. So there is a large gap between the number 2 position and number 3 position. And if you look at the, just a minute. Is it visible? Excuse me?
Visible.
Yeah. So the basic reason is there is a limited access to the state-of-art experimental facilities. That could be one of the reasons. Could be limited access to state-of-the-art experimental facilities. Another reason could be restricted access to scientific literature or limited collaboration among research groups. These are the possible reasons why our number of publications, we are not able to turn the actual scientific work into number of publications. That is the reason. And if you are able to inculcate the research spirit at early stage of education, we will be in a better position to increase these numbers. And publications motivate the young students to pursue research as career. And if you are starting at early stage, this will help in increasing these numbers. And good work can be done even with simple facilities, and it is important to document research output for the time and money spent. Many of the master students, for example, many of the faculty members will be knowing that there is a master student, he'll do a lot of work, and by the time he gets a job, he'll forget the work, and then all the money and time that is spent on the research, it may not be really converted into a research paper. So idea of this presentation is the intention is to make students aware of scientific writing and publishing it in a good journal. So that is the idea. So this has two the presentations. I'm sorry. This has two presentations. First one is this one, followed by how to publish a scientific paper by Ms. Swati. Now, why to write a scientific paper at all? The foremost thing is passion for scientific research. And scientific journals are medium to disseminate the research results. So we need to write a paper. And we can take the credit for the inventions and discoveries, whatever are made. And if we are able to contribute early to writing, most of these research papers are the output from the PhD students. So you can avoid the stress of doing everything at the end of probably 4 years. You start writing at that time, you take a lot of stress. But if you are able to convert whatever chapter or whatever packet of work into a paper then and there, I think it will give a lot of the comments that are obtained from the independent reviewers when the paper manuscript goes to the reviewers, and their comments will be of immense help in writing the thesis. And whatever paper is published in a reputed journal, that is a certificate of approval for the institute to accept their thesis. And certain times to claim and demonstrate strategic systems to overcome technology, materials, and equipment denials. Suppose you want some material of some strategic material or a dual-use material. If someone knows that this material is not available in the country, probably they can deny. But if you are having research papers and if you are doing work, if people come to know, then the denial may not be there. And another point is avoid lost data. Like for example, document the results in archival system. If you don't do that work and publish it in either in a report or in a publication, whatever data is generated is lost forever. This is many faculty members would have noticed this. They generate a lot of data, students generate a lot of data. Suddenly that data, if it is not published, it goes into, it will be completely lost. And even in organizations, whatever work is done, if it is properly not documented, sometimes the same work needs to be repeated after some time. So this is the importance of writing and publishing the work. And of course, to get recognized through good citations and H&X, and fulfill academic requirements to obtain PhD, DSE or habilitation. And papers are also required for funding agencies. Whenever projects are funded by certain agencies, they demand that it should be published, or for jobs and promotions. These are the basic reasons why we go for scientific papers. Now, it is not only that publishing, it is where you publish matters a lot. I want to share this example with all of you. You can see the picture of Dan Shetman, the well-known metallurgist, receiving the Nobel Prize from the King of Sweden for the discovery of quasi-crystals. He has received the Nobel Prize in chemistry for the paper that he has published on the right side, bottom, in Physical Review Letters. This is an internationally acclaimed journal, and the paper is published in November 1984. The point I want to bring is, simultaneously in India, there are groups working on same area. If you look at the title of the paper, Metallic Phase with Long Range Orientational Order and No Translational Symmetry. Basically, it is talking about the discovery of quasi-crystals. But in the same time frame, in 1985, manuscripts were submitted on the electron microscopy of quasi-crystals and related subjects, structures by the team from Indian Institute of Science, published in Current Science, that is the Institute Journal. Another from Banaras Hindu University, on the basis for synthesis of quasi-crystals in the journal Pramana. These are academy publications or institute publications. Had this work been published in more reputed international journal, probably we would have had an Indian connection to the Nobel Prize. What I am saying is, I want to stress that it is more important where you publish, and that matters a lot. And the hindsight, probably he got a Nobel Prize 25 years later. And when people look at these papers, they will feel that, okay, something could have been more from Indian side could have been there. So please always try to think where you are going to submit your manuscript. Now, before we go into really writing a scientific paper, we should judge, are we really ready to write a scientific paper? So manuscript preparation starts well in advance of the actual writing. And it is not that one day we get up and say that today I am going to start writing the paper. So the assimilation of data starts months before or years before the actual paper that is written. And we should have clear understanding about what we are going to publish, and the plan and execution are going to be most important. And before we start writing the paper, we need to ask certain questions like, did I do something new and interesting? These questions are very important. And these questions will help us in selecting the journal. Is there anything innovative in my work that leads to significant improvement in the present understanding? Or is my work related directly to a current hot topic? Does my work provide solutions to difficult problems? If you are answering these questions, if the answer is yes, probably you can select a good quality journal, a high impact factor journal. And if you feel that these are not so, responses are no to certain some of these things, probably we can go for a more humble journal with a low impact factor, or we can try to improve it. So we need to judge ourselves and in selecting or getting ready for writing the paper. So the basic principles before writing a manuscript. we need to cherish our work and be passionate about our work all the time. So we need to take pride in doing the work. And there is no secret recipe, only dedication and hard work are the age-old techniques and age-old rules that give you this success in publishing. And we must also remember that editors and reviewers to whom the paper is sent, they are highly reputed scientists and therefore their time is valuable. And unless we follow the guidelines, it is very likely that it will not be encouraged. So please keep in mind that we need to follow certain rules before writing the manuscript, and also important to understand the publication ethics to avoid certain violations both professionally and legally. So I just want to put a slide on plagiarism so that it is very important, and it is nothing but turning somebody's works into as your own work and copying large pieces of text from a source without citing it, taking passages from multiple sources, piecing them together and turning the work as your own, and copying from a source but changing few words and phrases to disguise plagiarism, and paraphrasing from a number of sources without citing it. So we need to understand how this it actually comes. And sometimes it is possible to cite sources but still plagiarize because you are not giving the right kind of information in bibliography and are not quoting properly the content that you are copying. So we need to be extremely cautious about it. There are softwares, to check the plagiarism, similarity index, all these things. So please remember that when you are writing, when you are trying to read and write a paper, these issues are really important. Otherwise, it will be having problem in getting rejected. And another point that is very important before we write a paper or think about it is the paper is ultimately going into a reviewer's hand. And if we are knowing the reviewer's mind a priori beforehand, it will be very helpful for all of us. So what are the typical questionnaires? Whenever reviewer is giving his opinion on the paper, whether he is recommending or rejecting it, there are certain questions. A questionnaire is given to him, and these are the questions in that questionnaire. He will be asked these questions. For example, is the topic within the scope of the journal? So if he says that no, then it is outrightly rejected because it is outside the scope of the journal. So you should ensure that the scope of the journal, your paper is meeting within the scope of the journal. Does the paper contain sufficient new material? If the answer is no, again it gets rejected. So you need to ensure that there is sufficient new material. Is it presented concisely and well organized? Are the methods and experiments presented in a way that they can be reproduced? Suppose your experimental section is not good, they are not given enough details, it can get rejected. So you need to give those details that even any other researcher anywhere in the world can reproduce the results again. Are the results presented adequately? Suppose the results are insufficient, again it can get rejected. Is the discussion relevant, concise and well documented? Are the conclusions supported by data presented? Suppose the conclusions are not supported by data. Again, he says that it is not sufficient data is not there. Then he may recommend a rejection. Is the language, English, grammar, voice, tense, are they acceptable? Suppose the language quality is not up to the mark. Typically, he may say that it is not up to the mark. Are the figures, tables adequate, legible and well designed? Is there information duplication? Suppose you are presenting both as a figure and table. Are there too many of them? If you give more than say 15-20 figures, sometimes it may say that no, it is too many figures, I am not recommending. Are the references cited in the text included in the references list? If any of these things are not properly done, there is a high chance of rejection. Now, just to give you a feel about what kind of manuscripts are there. There are typically three types of manuscripts. You have full-length articles, that is substantially completed works that have significant results from original research. So most of the journal articles that we are reading are belonging to full-length articles. And second thing is rapid communications, where you have where you need a quick publication, where you have a significantly improved idea, where you want to communicate the results before others do. So these are rapid communications. These are very small articles and limited size depending on the journal. And third one is of course review articles, which are invited by the journal editor and they summarize the recent developments on the hot topic, and they do not contain any new results. They are all published results, but summarizing in a very global article, a holistic picture is given in them. So we must evaluate what kind of article we are submitting, and the best person to do this is PhD supervisor. Obviously, is having the full knowledge about the work, and probably colleagues, if you discuss with them, they'll give an idea about it, what kind of article is suitable for your work. Now, selecting the journal is very important. I already gave you an example of how selecting a not so international journal has resulted in probably in Indian connection to a Nobel Prize. probably selecting a journal is very important. And if you look at earlier, maybe 25, 30 years back, we used to have few major broad-based journals. Okay, now presently there are so many new journals by publishing houses, and these journals are catering to very, very specific areas. For example, if I want to publish a paper on shape memory materials, there is a journal on shape memory alloys. And similarly, if you look at nanomaterials, there are more than 10 journals on nano with a keyword nano alone, different journals. So we have a lot of opportunity to publish in specific journals, or if you want to have specific in that people who are publishing in that area, you can go for that, or you can go for a broader journal, which is also having an area where this particularly whatever topic you are selecting. So important point is, where do manuscripts in your research area get published? So you would have referred some papers during your course of work, and those are the journals you should look at before you select the journal. So where you have referred in your manuscript, those are the journals that you should be first referring. And of course, keyword search you can do for websites that give you recent publications in the area where you are working. And also some points you need to remember. What is the turnaround time? Suppose some journals take very long time for getting the paper published. So if you are in a hurry to get it published, probably you should go for where the time is low. We must remember the high rejection rates. For example, the very prominent journals like Science, Nature, these journals have rejection rate of more than 90%. So rarely that does the work go into those kind of journals, and before even attempting, you should evaluate, self-evaluate what kind of work it is there, and choose the journal accordingly. And there are certain journals that have page charges, they have color print charges for figures, open access charges. So when you are submitting, you please check whether these journals charge for publishing, and if it is published, then you have to pay. So that is a precondition. And last but not the least, never submit a manuscript for many journals at the same time. So we should not send, and we are in fact we are declaring in our letter to the editor that this manuscript is not submitted anywhere. So unless the declaration is there, they may not be even considering. Now, before you start preparing manuscript, there are certain guidelines, and the guidelines is first and foremost we have to download the guide for others and read it multiple times. So as many times as possible to understand what are the requirements from the journal side. So it includes the editorial guidelines, submission procedures, fees for open access, copyright issues, ethical guidelines. All these things you must be well aware. And you must apply all the guide for others to your manuscript. Even if the first draft itself you have to apply, so that the manuscript is designed for submitting for a particular journal. It could also be with references to reference citations. Somebody puts in brackets, somebody puts in superscript. So we must follow the guidelines that are given in guide for others, and we have to check whether there is a word count that is stipulated. And these things are important because it is saving both the author's time and editor's time. And editors dislike wasting time on poorly prepared manuscripts. So we must be very careful while preparing and submitting the manuscript. Otherwise, the manuscript simply comes back saying that these are following things. It will be unsubmitted. So when you submit next day morning, you come to know that your manuscript has been unsubmitted for the following reasons. So many things are not followed. This kind of mail you receive. So have a count on the number of figures, tables, word count of abstract, full paper, and check for the journal guidelines. This is very important before you start preparing for the manuscript. And this slide gives you a typical, it is not that you need to follow these guidelines, but it gives an idea for those novices, for those people who are about to write a paper. This is the typical structure of and length of a manuscript. Like you have a title, a short, clear, informative title. You have an abstract of about a paragraph. This is very important. There are when you copy and paste, the software itself says that you are exceeding the number of words. So you have to be very careful in choosing the words. So when somebody says that it should be less than 250 words, ensure that it is less than 250 words, because last minute when you are submitting, you don't want to remove the last line and submit. So please follow the guidelines. Introduction maybe typically about 1 to 2 pages. Experimental section or method section, what we call about a page. Sometimes this section is immediately after introduction. For few journals, it could be at the end of the paper. Then about 3 to 4 pages of results and about 4 to 6 pages of discussion, and maybe a paragraph or 5 to 6 bulleted points on conclusions. Typically 6 to 10 figures, maybe an average of 8 with each figure on one particular page, and tables maybe 2 to 4, and references between 20 and 40, with 20 as a minimum probably and 40 for an upper bound for a typical paper. It's not a strict guideline. If it needs more papers, definitely it can be supported, and supporting information. This is the typical structure of a manuscript that is published in a journal. So till now I've talked about how the pre-processing stages of manuscript. Now onwards I'll be talking about how to organize a manuscript in your, how to organize it in your actual manuscript. If you look at, there are two boxes, one on the left and another on right, and probably I can use a pointer option. And so you can see here, the typical sequence in published articles is you have a title of the manuscript, you have an abstract highlighting the work done, you have certain keywords, you have introduction describing what did you do and why did you do, and experimental data, probably how did you do it, results, what did you find, discussion, what does it all mean, and highlighting conclusion, and of course acknowledgement, references, tables and figures, and supporting materials. This is the typical way in which the manuscript, when you read a manuscript, you will find all these things in this sequence. But this is not the order in which you have to write a manuscript. The order in which you have to write a manuscript is completely different, and the first and foremost stage is preparing figures and tables. So we need to have all the experimental data put in the form of figures and tables. So first make these things to the journal's requirements. And you differentiate what is going into the main text and what is going into the supplementary material. So once you make this differentiation, you will be knowing what to write in the main text and what to write for the supplementary text. And once you do this differentiation, you have to write the experimental section, because already you have done the data, you have plotted, you have made figures, you have made tables. So you already know what are the experiments you have performed, and write in a logical sequence what are the experiments done, and that section you complete. Once you have completed that, based on the figures and tables, you have to write the results section, because already you have results, so you need to write the section in that. Now, having results, having figures, and having experimental section, you write the discussion part. And once your discussion is complete, you need to write a conclusion, because you have discussed enough and you would have already come to a conclusion, so it is clear. And then you can go and write the introduction, because now to fit a proper story of what are the results you got and what are the experiments you have performed, what is the discussion and conclusion, you can frame a nice story and tell that this is what I wanted to do and I did in a logical manner. And after this is over, we can write an abstract, because the abstract has to be crisp with a very selected number of words, very crisp abstract, highlighting what is the work done, what did you get, and what are the conclusions. And finally, you can compose a title and select the keywords for indexing based on the work, which are the most important keywords. Probably you can write acknowledgements and references. So this slide is the most important slide in my presentation. Please remember, again, I am telling you, the sequence that is there in the published articles is entirely different from the order in which we are writing. And if you follow this order, it will be easy for you to write. And I'll be going on step-by-step manner how to make this sequence. So I've told you a sequence. Now I'll be giving you information on how to prepare the manuscript and how to attain each of these steps. All of us know that figures are worth a million words. So the most important part of any paper, and which decides the acceptance of a paper in a journal, in fact, is the figures. If your figures are good, and immediately there is a feeling that yes, this particular manuscript has quality. So figures and tables are the most efficient way to present your results. So you decide. So I've given an example of a left side a table, and the same data has been made in the form of a figure on the right side. So if you feel that the numerical data is very important, you can present the numerical data in the form of a table, absolutely okay. But if you feel that you need to compare different materials, different grades, then you can probably choose your picture. And here you can see the strength of a material is given as a function of test temperature, and along with the elongation on the right hand axis. And a quick cursory glance gives you which is the material that is having the highest ultimate tensile strength, probably at low temperature. You can easily identify. So a figure conveys the meaning of the data in a much more easier fashion, and comparison is possible across the data sets. So you please select what kind of presentation you want to make. Now, there are certain tips in preparing figures and tables. No illustration should duplicate the information elsewhere in the manuscript. So don't give both table and figure. It is not required. If you feel one of them is enough, then figures and table legends must be self-explanatory. So you should not refer to the text of the manuscript when you are looking at a figure. If I am looking at a figure, that figure alone should give me, along with figure caption, it should give me every information that I am looking for. So that is very important. So all legends should be put within the figure frame, and we should give every information in that, and avoid crowded plots and well-selected scale, and use well-selected scale. So if you put large amount of data in a plot, it will be confusing, it will not be giving the right kind of information, and it will be clumsy. So you select the right well-selected scale. For example, if I change the scale on the right-hand figure, and if I select maybe 0 to 1000 or temperature scale 0 to 1000, you cannot get this kind of behavior, because the scale, to get the give the correct picture of the data variation, you need to choose the right scales. So this is very important again. Think about the appropriate axis label size. So these points you should remember, how many minor points, how many major points, all these things come by experience, and you can probably sit with some seniors in selecting and show them. And always you remember that the figures will get reduced in the final print. So when you are making a figure, it could be very large, but in the print, either in the single column format or double column format, this figure goes into a very small size of maybe 80 millimeter by 80 millimeter. So think about the final size, and then start thinking about the size in which this font should be selected. And include clear symbols that are easy to distinguish. So this is important, and don't include too many boring tables. So you should include those kind of additional data in supplementary material. So these are some of the tips. And remember that each photograph must have a scale marker. So when you are taking a photograph, always you put a scale or some reference marking. So this will be missed, and finally you will not be knowing what is the actual kind of the size of the object. And another problem in figures is the misuse of lines and histograms. Lines joining data can be used only when you are doing a time series presentation or consecutive sample data. So you cannot simply join where there is no connection between samples, and in such cases histograms should be presented. So you have to be very careful in making the figures. So always keep in, as I told you, keep the size of the photographs in the final print. And the quality of the photographs changes when we club. For example, you copy a photograph from the original software where it is giving, and you put it in either a PPT or a Microsoft Word and try to save or make a slide from that. The quality resolution will be going on changing. So be careful that you need to have the same quality maintained as good as the original. So that is very important. And in doing so, you should not increase the size of the figure into several megabytes. So the figure file should be small, but the quality should be good. So such kind of things are very important. And just to give you a typical example of how to make a photograph and how to put the proper micron bars, a typical photograph looks like this of a plane strain compression specimen. But important thing is, here you should put a micron marker with the size of the bar, and you should mention what is the direction in which the specimen is oriented. Or it could be like you are doing some analysis of some particular thing. You need to give photographs or specimens from where they are located and what is the direction. Or you want to show a photograph of a close picture, you need to give what is the direction in which the specimen is taken, what is the feature you are doing, what is the feature you want to highlight. For example, here a crack is highlighted, and you need to give the proper orientation and while taking photograph, and mention all the details that are important for the pictures. And not only that, when you are creating figures from the experimental data, any experimental data that is coming out of the equipment, it could be in the form of a raw data, or it could be in the form of a trace sheet or a graph sheet. Never give the graph sheet as it is when you are sending for publication. Don't take a scan of that one and submit it. You try to get the digital data. Earlier days, we used to go for draftsmen and get the graph paper converted into a beautiful sketch. But nowadays, we have all computer generated data. Take time in spend time in creating figures that are appealing and give important trends in data. So whatever data is given by the equipment, you try to plot it, try to put additional information in the figure like photographs of the specimens, or you analyze the data in such a way that you can get much more information. You can see a plot that is a true stress true strain plot, how it is converted, and how so much of information is put in a particular figure that gives so many details like the test temperature by choosing the data points or using colors, different colors to identify different behaviors, or the line differentiating the bilinearity. All these things can be marked on the figure so that the reader is impressed with the figure, the editor and reviewers are impressed with the figure, that lot of work has gone into this. All these things are important, and we have to pay special attention to font sizes, because when you are making all these things including in the figure, it may get clumsy. So you have to make a figure of such size and such fonts you have to choose that it will not make a clumsy figure at the end. This comes by experience, but you need to put effort. And having completed the figure section, how to make a figures, next thing is to write the methods and experimental section, because we have already known, we know what is the data that is generated. This section presents how the problem was studied and all the experimental techniques used in the manuscript. So when you are proposing new method, for example, it is unknown to others, you need to include the detailed information for anyone to reproduce the experiment. So this is very important. Anything that doesn't give the detailed procedure, it is likely to get rejected. And you need to give step-by-step procedure for synthesis. Wherever chemical abstract chemical manuscripts are there, you need to give that procedure for a procedure adopted for experimentation. It is not necessary to repeat the details in established methods, and you don't need to give the pictures of such equipment also. And what are the materials used, their conditions, sampling plan, types of specimens, these are all important. What is the kind of sampling plan that you have done? And essential information on chemicals and their reproducibility. Like, for example, you are giving information that I've used a particular chemical, but you don't mention the purity of it. And somebody wants to reproduce your experiment and say that I have not obtained the same results as what has been reported. Probably you would have not given the purity. So these are all important. You must give as many finer details as possible. And wherever it is possible, you use the standard methods of nomenclature and numbering systems. Like, for example, you want to give chemicals, International Union of Pure and Applied Chemistry designations are there, or wherever there, you want to give detailed experimental conditions, variables, and ranges studied in the experimental section. And reviewers will criticize if you are giving incomplete or incorrect methods, and they may reject the manuscript outrightly, because this section is very important for recreating the results or reproducing the results. Somebody wants to follow your method, if they can't do it, and it is of no use. So then there are occasions where you are giving some photographs of test setups, how you have used, or you have designed some fixtures. So you need to give them, but routine equipments like an electron microscope or an X-ray diffraction unit or some other thing, you don't need to give a photograph. And you need to make a distinction between a specimen and a sample. This is a typical mistake that many people do. Sample means representative of the bulk, and specimen means what is used for testing. So we have to use consistently whatever language we are using, that has to be consistent throughout the manuscript. A name of the technique, equipment used, make and model, applicable standard like ASTM, number of experiments for repeatability, all these things need to be given in the experimental section. And for measurement of units, always follow International System of Units. For analysis of data, you will be doing a lot of softwares you will be using. So wherever there are softwares for the data analysis, you need to give the make and version of the software. And whatever statistical methods you have used, those methods, whatever you have followed, you have to give in the experimental section. And always remember that the list, whatever methods you have used, the results also should be in the same order so that that logic is followed. Okay. Now, just to give a feel about what kind of experimental procedure, procedures have been used, same thing, instead of writing, you can give in the form of a figure. You can make a beautiful schematic. Here you are able to see a schematic that is drawn for one of the publications, that is in Metallurgical Transactions. You can see that it is a typical study of a caliber rolling. So how the rolls are, what is the design, what is the caliber shape, size, how the rolling is done, what is the direction, what is the initial specimen, how the temperatures are selected, what are the specimen designations. Everything is embedded in the form of a figure, and you can simply write that The schematic of the experimental procedure is described in this particular figure. This is one method. Otherwise, you can also write in the form of text if it is not so complicated. Okay. Now you can also give the nomenclature of specimens in the form of a table at the starting in the introduction in the experimental section itself, because it becomes very clumsy to describe each and every time the nomenclature in the results or discussion section. So define whatever experimental, those people who are doing extensive experimentation, you define in the nomenclature section itself what are the nomenclatures of each and every specimen, so that throughout the manuscript that designation can be used consistently. And scientific writing is a continuous process. As I told you initially, it starts months ahead. Just to give you a feel about, for example, the figure on the left side, flux bounded tungsten and inert gas welding specimens. These welded coupons were made over a period of 3 months. So based on so many experimental parameters and all. But finally, when you club all the weld coupons have to be clubbed together, and you have to make a nice figure with all the details and the fluxes used, all these things. So you need to take, as you progress, when you are doing experimental work, please remember to document, to take photographs and keep it safely so that you can make a figure finally and present it in the paper as one figure. So similarly, these deep drawn cups, they were drawn over a period of time. Or when you finally choose to put these figures, you need to put a scale mark and you need to show them as if they have been done in a progressive way. And whenever it is possible, as I mentioned you, wherever you want to give the schematics of the test setups and all, you can give the drawings so that it will make it very clear rather than describing them in text form. So these are all some of the important things that you need to remember. Now, having written about experimental section, method section, next step is to write the result section. So we are having figures in our hand. So you can put the figures in front of you. And this section presents the important findings from the study. The word important is very important here. Hence, only representative results. You would have done a lot of results you would have obtained. But what suits the manuscript only needs to be given. And even if you have done a lot of photographs, lot of pictures, lot of data, only representative results need to be provided. And most of the journals offer possibility of adding supplementary material. So whichever don't go into the main text can be sent to the supplementary section. And you use subheadings and properly number them so that results of same type together. For example, 3.1, you are talking about a stress strain behavior, for example. So under the subheading, you discuss all the results pertaining to that particular section so that it is easy to review and even easy for reader to understand. So this is very important. So present the data in a logical order that tells a clear story for better understanding in the same order as whatever you have done in the experimental section. And here you will not get references. In this section, you should not write any references because you are not discussing the results. You are only giving whatever results you have obtained from your experimental. And wherever it is possible, you use mean and standard deviation in the data that you are reporting, so that how many specimens, the error bars. So these things are required in the figures and you need to discuss about them here. And wherever it is the results are being given, for example, many of the times we feel the strength of a material, for example, an ultimate tensile strength of a material, they don't round it off. Something like 300 MPa you want to give. Suppose the equipment or the calculation gives 300.0472 or something. People put the same number. So we need to round off the property data to the nearest single digit. And another important thing is percentages are used for very small samples. Suppose say out of 2 samples, 1 has failed. So you should not say that 50% of samples have failed. So wherever you are giving numbers for small samples, since the base is very small, we should be very careful in giving percentages to the data. So these are all some of the things that are important. And to put the results in a digestible form is very important. I just want to share this example on a photographs of microstructures of samples compressed at high temperature. And if you put them, and you can see that they are strained at different strain rates and different temperatures, the test temperatures. And if you don't put in this format and you try to put as a function of temperature at 4 strain rates, 4 figures, or as a function of temperature at 5 figures, in sets of 5 figures, you will not be getting the common feature among all the tests. So by clubbing all the data into this kind of figure, you can give a holistic picture, you can give a global picture, And looking at this picture, you can say how the temperature influences the grain size or how the strain rate influences the microstructure. These things can be obtained because you have put them, you have assembled them, you have integrated them and made a montage of the photographs so that it gives a clear picture. So how best the results can be presented to the audience or the readers is the most important thing when writing a scientific paper. Now, having talked about the results, now we are ready for writing the discussion part. And this discussion part is the most important section in a manuscript. Majority of the manuscripts get rejected because discussion is weak. This is the common comment that comes from the reviewers and editors, that discussion is weak, so we cannot accept it. So results should be discussed in this section without reiterating them. You do not write the same results again and again, but here you have to compare the results obtained with those published. So you already have a lot of scientific literature available and you have your own results. So the discussion section should discuss these results with respect to what is the knowledge available. And even if you don't agree with those results, suppose your results are disagreement, even then you have to discuss, and you can say that, okay, my interpretation is better than the literature interpretation of the data. And you can take the following tips when you are writing the discussion part. Whatever you should never write any statement that goes beyond the results, what results can support. Suppose you have done the experiments within a limited scale of data, limited variables. You cannot extrapolate and say that, okay, this make a global statement. So you should be very careful, and you should not use expressions such as higher temperature, qualitative expressions such as higher temperature at a lower rate, highly significant. These become qualitative statements, so they are not preferred. And you should not bring sudden introduction of new terms into introduction section. Whatever has been discussed in introduction only should be brought in a discussion section. We should not bring new terms and terminologies. So please be careful about these things in writing discussion. And speculations are possible. Sometimes you can do interpretations, but without nothing should be there without a fact. So these interpretation, we should think about the following things. Like, for example, how do your results relate to the original question or objectives outlined? So in your mind already you would outlined what are the objectives. So how do the results relate? Does the data support your hypothesis? Does it contradict others? So these things are important. Are the results consistent with whatever other investigators have reported? So these points we need to take care. Discuss the weaknesses and discrepancies. If your results were unexpected, try to explain is there any other way to interpret your results. Sorry. And you have to also tell what further research would be necessary to answer the questions raised by your your results. And you may do further experiments. You can suggest derivations or simulations that can give better understanding of the results obtained. Just I want to give you an example of how your results should be presented in, how your results should be compared in discussion section. This particular plot shows the mechanical properties of materials, particularly yield strength and elongation at 77 Kelvin. Now, whichever is having a hash mark in the parenthesis, they are the data that is from the present study. So in discussion section, we are expected to compare our results and say how our results compare with others. For example, this particular data is from this literature. It shows that this is the best material having the highest yield strength and elongation combination. So we can say that yes, we have this material processed under these conditions gives the ideal strength versus elongation combination. So we need to compare, and this comparison is how this is made. So you need to have a lot of data assimilated. So this data is taken from the introduction part, and results are taken, your own results are taken from the experimental part and results part, and you have to make such plots. And you can also make in the form of a tables. For example, a typical discussion section tables looks like this. You have a lot of references and you have your own data from the present work, and you compare your data and discuss in the discussion section how this is particularly talking about some activation energy calculations and other details. But important point is you need to have all the reference data with you and compare them with the your own data that is generated in the experimental section. Having completed the discussion part, now it is a time to conclude. And how do we do this? And this section is intended to demonstrate how the work advances the field from the present state of knowledge. What is the significant improvement we have done? And reviewers give significant importance to this section. This is very important. And a common error in this section is repeating the abstract. Many people try to write conclusions similar to abstract. So this is one important point that we need to remember, or just listing the results, whatever have been obtained. That is not correct. So without a clear conclusion section, reviewers and readers will find it too difficult to judge the work. So take proper time, think the outcome properly, and we should give clear scientific justification. Otherwise, again, there will be a problem in getting the manuscript rejected. And now we are ready to write. The next step is to write the introduction section. Now conclusion is over, and the introduction section is very important because this is the place where author starts reading it. So never use more words than necessary. So be concise and be to the point. And people get tempted to write long introductions. It is not necessary. Refer to the previous research with citations. First, you give the whole picture, whatever the global picture, global know-how, and take the reader to the specific point of view and highlight the gaps in the existing literature. This is the most important part of the introduction section. And at the end, we need to state what is the purpose of writing this paper and what is the strategy adopted to answer the unknown, and create the hypothesis and objectives that must be clearly remarked at the end of the introduction. And don't use certain phrases like novel, first time, first ever, paradigm changing. These are not desirable. So good introduction should answer the following questions. What is the problem to be solved? Are there any existing solutions? And which is the best solution? And what is the main limitation? And what do you hope to achieve? So these are the answers that need to, these are the answers that people expect in the introduction section. You need to introduce the main scientific publications on which the work is based. So always good original important works in the field need to be introduced, probably with certain review articles, and never give irrelevant and improper citations, and avoid too many self-citations or bunching of references. What is the meaning of bunching? You say that nickel alloys are good for high temperature application, so you don't give 1 to 20, for example. You need to identify which super alloy, whether what kind of work is done in that particular work, what is the typical point that you want to highlight, why you have taken that particular citation before giving the reference. So you need to split the references and give the important outcome of that reference and why you are referring. So that has to be properly justified in the introduction section. And brief literature on the state of the art till the time of submission. So this is also very important. You don't give lot of old references, because lot of old references will make your area of work irrelevant unless it is having something very novel. So always editors will say that references are too old. This is one comment that normally you get. So select those references that are up to date, and each statement and claim made in the introduction section should be referred properly. So when you are making a statement, you should have in parentheses the reference from which you have taken that statement. And purpose of the study should be brought at the end of introduction. So this is very important. So before you go into the experimental part, you are writing this section, and here you will write what is the unknown and what makes to take up this study, and what is the point you want to prove, what is the way you are taking, and how you plan to achieve. So this introduction section will end with these queries, and then you will go to the experimental section. So that is how the paper it goes. Now, having completed the introduction section, you need to have a simple and informative abstract. As I already told you, abstracts must be kept short, maybe typically about 250 to 300 words, and it provides a short description of the perspective, key results, and purpose of your paper. So we should take this 250 words, you have to judiciously divide among the all these things and write it, and tells the prospective readers what you did, what are the important findings. So this is the most important part, and you have to be creative in generating curiosity. And together with the title of the manuscript, it is like advertising your article, because this is the place where most of the people leave the article. If it is not finding, if they are not finding interesting, they may not read subsequent parts of the paper. So you should make it interesting and easily understood without reading the whole article. And we should not use jargon and uncommon abbreviations and references in abstract. And a clear abstract will strongly influence whether or not your work is further considered by the editor. So people stop at that and take a view whether this work is really suitable for the journal. So be extremely careful in writing the abstract and choosing the words, and you must be accurate using the words and convey the precise meaning of research. And finally, you are coming to the title. Compose a short, concise and descriptive title. So this is important because this is the thing that goes everywhere in table of contents, and it is the first and best opportunity to attract the reader's attention. So readers will see the manuscript and they'll judge. And most of the readers are potential authors. So you will get good citation if you have made a good impression. So please choose the title accurately, appropriately and judiciously. And reviewers also will check whether the title is specific or whether it factually reflects the content of the manuscript. And you need to be very careful to get the title right. For example, there is an example here, how graphene is cut upon oxidation. Actually, it should have been how is graphene cut upon oxidation. So small mistakes do happen, and think about title carefully before you finalize it. And of course, the selecting the keywords. Earlier, it used to be very important prior to digitalization of the libraries. And now you can select the keywords, you can search the whole text. So if you ask the S3S, probably those who have done PhD maybe 25, 30 years back, people used to go to library and they used to have volumes like keyword index, author index and all. And we used to have some boxes like this, what I've shown in the figure. So where they are giving the index of keywords. So people used to search them and go to library, identify the journal, all these things they use. Now with simple click, you can search any word or phrase in any computer. So, but still you need to select keywords and you should not, as far as possible, try to select a keyword that is not there in the title. And it should be very specific, not a general keyword. So it gives a lot of search returns. When somebody is trying to search your article or search for a particular thing, you should see to that your keyword is useful in the researcher getting that returned. So that is important. Of course, writing the acknowledgements. Here you can thank people who have contributed to your manuscript and for providing probably materials and access to some facilities and technical help in executing experiments and writing and proof correcting. And importantly, most importantly, you have to thank the funding agency for giving grant or fellowship, or some people will take leave and write the article, so you have to thank them, or for the head of the institution wherever it is applicable. And finally, we need to write the references. References, this is the place where maximum mistakes are there in any manuscript. And when you manually do, you end up in not meeting the guidelines of the journal guidelines. So please take help of EndNote or Mendeley. There are bibliographic softwares are there, so that they will format your reference, and it is easy for you to handle references. And in the text, you must cite the scientific publications in progressive sequence. This is the most important. If you don't check it properly, if you don't use it, these softwares, there is a high chance that you will be missing certain things, particularly when you are handling large number of references. And always choose references from reputed journals, because if you take a lot of conference references and all, it will not give a good feeling for the reviewers. And too many old references you avoid, and don't overinflate with too many references, and avoid again self citations and citations from the same region. These are some of the things. And last but not least, many times people try to copy and paste from the title the author names. What happens is the author names comes with a superscript A, B, C, and that also comes in when copy, and it looks very bad for the reviewers that you are not even bothered to see this copy and paste. Now, having completed the steps of writing the article, there are some other means which also are required. For example, there is an option for graphical abstract. Some of the journals ask these graphical abstracts, and you effectively use a featured image used to display on the journal homepage. So by looking at you can make a figure that conveys the theme of the paper. So if you put little bit effort, you can get lot of interest from the audience. Your citations will increase. So this can be used effectively by putting some effort. And you need to get permission from copyrighted material. Wherever you are taking material from the other sources, you have to get approval. So it's something, it looks like this. So you need to write to the editor of the journal, say that I want to use such and such figure from such and such paper. Please permit me to use. And sometimes you have to pay, otherwise the journal gives with a signature that yes, this particular figure is permitted to be used in this particular paper. So this is very important. You cannot just like that lift material and put it in your paper. And each of the published figure and tables has to be properly obtained. Permission has to be obtained from copyright holder. And even in figures also, you need to mention from where you have taken. So this is one particular example that was published. So please remember, if it is your own paper, a simple effort, rights and permissions in the journal homepage, you can get your own paper, you can get permission for reproducing. So there are certain procedures to follow, and please get the permission from copyright for copyrighted materials. And finally, some matter about covering letter, just to give a clue about, you have to write a covering letter to the journal, a formal letter from the corresponding author to the editor of the journal, should contain basic information on title and authors, and highlight the important outcome of the work and why you think it suits the journal. This is very important. Why you are thinking of submitting to this journal. A statement that work is neither published nor under consideration, so don't send your manuscript elsewhere. And statements that each author has participated in the research and all others have seen and agreed to the submitted version. And you can also suggest potential reviewers in the covering letter. So there is an option to make it in the while submitting. There anyway you will be asked, but here also you can suggest. And some journals ask for prime novelty statement. So what is the important outcome of work and how you feel it is novel? You have to write in telegraphic language. Even there are the number of words that are prescribed. So follow the guideline. And this is a checklist before you start uploading, which is very important. So you need to keep all the things when you are ready to submit the manuscript. You need covering letter, main text file, figure files, highlights, prime novelty statement, conflict of interest, source of funding declaration, copyright forms. All these things you need to put it in a folder, registered with the intended journal where you are intending to submit, get the login credentials, and decide who is the communicating author. He will receive all the information on behalf of co-authors from the editor, so he'll be the corresponding author, and decide the sequence of co-authors and all the contact details, so that they will receive mails that you are, the journal will ask confirmation of the authorship. So that is required. So be careful while typing all the details. Check for the allowed cumulative file size. So sometimes it is 150 MB, 200 MB like that. Whether all your files are meeting the requirement or sometimes you are exceeding, it will not allow you to submit. So you be careful, and all figures, sub-figures have to be clubbed into a single figure. So when you are making the figure, you be careful that each figure is only one figure. So sub-figures have to be clubbed and made into a single TIFF format or JPEG format, whatever it is. And you need to have table captions and figure captions at the end of the text. And tables usually are put at the end of the main text file. You need to suggest 4 potential reviewers. So be prepared to give who are the people whom you are suggesting or opposing also. Some places there is an option to oppose the following reviewers. So these people should be unconnected, recognized, active persons in your area, chosen from different regions, not from the same country, probably those who are familiar with the work. And last but not least, don't be in a hurry. Select a peaceful time without any distraction, with good internet connectivity for uploading your manuscript. There are certain tools I thought I'll share with you. Publishers are websites to access journals. You can always search for the journals in different websites. And you can track the researchers. There are open researcher and contributor IDs, researcher ID or Google Scholar. All these things you can track the researchers, and similarity checking softwares like Authenticate or Turnitin, which you can use it for checking the plagiarism content. Typically, it should be less than 10 to 15%, depending on the journal. And there are the bibliographic information software or referencing management softwares like Mendeley, EndNote, or BibTeX. So all these things will be useful for you. You get familiarized with these softwares when you are interested in writing papers. And a couple of slides more, common mistakes in submitted manuscripts. So generally, there are certain mistakes that you need to take care. Spelling mistakes and grammar mistakes. Never allow them to creep into your manuscript, because it will immediately give a feeling that it puts the reviewers and editors down. All authors must read and check the manuscript for English. And second point is not following the guide for authors. You don't do, editorial office will immediately send back the manuscript asking for changes. And sometimes your manuscript is not supposed to contain the author names, like they are sending it for blind review and you are giving that author details in the manuscript. That is a violation of the journal rules. So you have to see what the journal is asking and accordingly prepare your manuscript. And some journals ask for embedding the figures in the text, and some journals say that separately you submit. So what journal is asking, you should follow. And there are occasions where you are mixing the degree centigrade and Kelvin temperature. So use consistently throughout the manuscript whichever unit you want to use and what the journal is asking for. And even simple usages of et al, the people don't put the right, don't use it right way. And references not in sequence, all references not being referred in text is a very, very common thing that people do. So please be careful. And of course, permissions for copyrighted materials. Without taking the permission, you should not include it. And later on, you are not getting the permission. That will become a difficult thing to solve. And just to give a feel about what are the general reasons for rejection of manuscripts. So generally, after preliminary check from the editorial office for similarity indexes and checking for the scope of the journal, the manuscript is passed to the one of the editors handling the paper. So those people are seasoned people. Those editors-in-chief, they would have seen hundreds and hundreds of manuscripts. They have a sixth sense whether this manuscript is suitable for this journal or not. Basically, they derive from the following things. Care with which a manuscript is prepared. Suppose by looking at that, they can see whether this manuscript has been prepared for this journal or it is rejected from other journal, he has simply submitted, or has he followed the guide for others. Whether there is novelty in the work, whether abstract, highlighting and significance of work. They will see simply abstract, probably the novelty in that abstract, and the quality of figures and conclusion section, and general cursory look at the English language. It gives a feeling that yes, this manuscript is good, it can be considered for publication. Otherwise, you will say that large number of manuscripts have been continuously received from so many people, so we are unable to accommodate all of them, and there is no novelty. Like that, you will get some mail saying that they won't even send it for review. Please, the purpose of this presentation is to help you understand how to get a technically sound manuscript get accepted in a journal. So that is the basic idea. And finally, I've come to my end of my presentation. Take away from this presentation. So when you are started writing or thinking of writing, please follow certain guidelines. So preparing the manuscript starts much in advance to the actual writing. And always have a workbook with date and key observations. Whenever you have started doing research, this workbook is very important because that book should contain each and everything that you have done, each and every experimental detail or each and every result that you have obtained, you should note down. Because later on you will not be able to know the sequence, the samples, whether it has been properly treated, what treatment it has undergone. All these things you should chronologically keep a record of observations. So this book will solve many times many problems. So please have a workbook. Store all the data and have a good periodic backup of all files, preferably in a Google Drive or somewhere. Murphy's laws are applicable. When you start writing paper, you find that your hard disk got corrupted. So all kinds of things will happen. Create a folder and keep all important details until the paper is published. Whatever is relevant to that particular packet of work or whatever you want to send. So you should keep every update, you should keep materials in that folder and go on updating it with different file names. And take photographs right from start. You document it well and make good figures from that. And keep the experimental specimens safely for future reference. In case reviewer is asking you, please revisit the specimens, you should have them again. It's not that you have thrown them. And create slides with easy to understand schematics that convey theories and mechanisms. So how best you want to impress upon the readers, please go on continuously thinking about. Utmost care to make figures, and it almost decides the acceptance of your manuscript. And follow the guidelines for others and check the grammar check and spell check the manuscript line by line. So this is very important so that your manuscript gets without any problem. Now, I wish to leave you with a philosophy of scientific publishing. We are all trying to unravel the mysteries of nature. And in the words of Shinya Yamanaka, he is a Kyoto Nobel laureate for medicine, and he is the founder of stem cell research. And he is saying that in his words, science is the process of stripping away the layers of wheels that cover up the truth. When a scientist lifts one wheel, he or she discovers yet another. However, sometimes a scientist with the right amount of luck pulls away a certain wheel to discover the truth. This fortunate scientist will then publish a paper in top-notch academic journal to wide acclaim. Even so, we must not forget the act of removing each wheel is equally important. It is unfair that only the lucky scientist should receive all the prize. The point is, we are trying to lift the wheel in our own way and the journey continues. And I sincerely acknowledge the sources from which I have taken references are given here, and you please follow these references. They are very useful in getting more about how to write good papers. And I consider it an honor to be with all of you, and I thank all of you for your kind attention. And in the words of Dr. Vikram Sarabhai, those who can pose basic questions are the ones who can best do applied work. Thank you all. Thank you for the time given. Thank you for the opportunity given.
Great presentation, Murthy.
Thank you, sir.
Brought out all your experience of decades together to see that our country is benefited, our younger generation is benefited. I think it is going to take the students who are actually more than 1,000 people are watching it, and even from Ethiopia, Philippines, and Canada, I'm getting comments. Internationally watched and acclaimed. All of them are good comments. I will write it to you. It will be encouraging for all of us and all of you also, and all the participants. And in the years to come, this will be a milestone event in the process what we are doing of national building. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Murthy, for giving a detailed account of how to write a scientific paper. So there is an announcement for the participants who are attending the program online. So there will be an interactive session at the end of this morning session. So you can raise your hand in the software. There's a feature for that. So we will pick up some random questions at the end of this session. So with this, we'll move on to the next speaker. So Mrs. Swati Maheshwari. So I request Ms. Nirupama Tiwari to introduce the speaker.
Yeah. Good morning to all. Let me take this opportunity to introduce our next speaker, Madam Swati Maharshi. Swati Maharshi is currently editorial director at Springer Nature. Since Jan 2019, she leads the Applied Sciences and Engineering Books program in the Asia Pacific region. Prior to this, Swati has been instrumental in developing Springer's physical sciences books and journals programs in the Indian subcontinent. She developed and managed a large portfolio of both Springer-owned and key academic society journals. She is a recipient of a Special Contribution Award from the Indian Institute of Metals for her work on their flagship journal, Transactions of the Indian Institute of Metals. Swati's book portfolio at Springer's comprises books across all domains of engineering and applied science. She has successfully launched several new book partnerships with prestigious organizations such as INAE, Indian Institute of Metals, IIT Kanpur, CSIR, NAL, and the Infosys Science Foundation. Swati holds degree in physics and philosophy from the prestigious St. Stephen's College in Delhi. She has an extensive experience publishing engineering content across 2 continents. Prior to Springer, Swati has managed key engineering textbook portfolios in both India and US. Swati is a member of Material Research Society, Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, and the American Institute of Chemical Engineers. With this brief introduction, I welcome Madam Swati to give a talk on how to publish a scientific paper.
Thank you, ma'am, and thank you everyone who has joined us today. And thanks once again, a big thank you to everyone at ISRO for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to come over and do any work with ISRO. I'm just going to quickly share my screen. And just a quick warning, I might lose my connection for a few minutes. In case the electricity goes off, my router takes 3-4 minutes to come back on the backup. If that happens, please don't be scared. I will be back in a few minutes. Okay, it's already happened once this morning, so I thought I'd warn you. Okay. All right, let's get started. And thanks again also to Dr. Narayan Murthy for so nicely explaining a lot of the stuff that I usually explain in my workshop. So I'm going to talk to you about some of the other stuff today rather than writing of an article. For those of you who have attended presentations with me before, you know that I also have pretty much similar content in the presentation. Can you all see my screen?
Yeah, we are seeing.
Perfect. So I am mostly going to focus on parts of scientific writing and publishing, which are related to things other than the structure of the paper. I do have some slides on the structure of the paper because I think that's very important. And I might give you a few pointers if time permits us. But we are going to focus today on things like journal selection, understanding open access, citations, and also I want to spend some time with you all talking about ethics. Okay, so I'm going to skip my intro since I was already introduced so kindly. I am going to talk about Springer nature for a little bit, mostly because I want to explain some things about the nature of journals in general to you. So Springer nature was formed almost 6 years ago by the merger of Springer and Macmillan, which was the mother company for Nature. And these are the brands that we publish. You must be aware of many of them. We are one of the largest publishers of academic content in the world, and we have been around for almost 180 years. We have by number the largest portfolio of scientific journals and academic books published, with 3,000 plus journals running and 12,000 books published annually. We are also the largest open access publisher with 600 fully open access journals available. I will talk about open access in detail today. And we are very proud of the fact that most Nobel laureates have published in Springer Nature journals many times before they receive their Nobel awards. And you see here some of the most famous names. And while Dr. Narayan Murthy was talking, I made an edit to this. So Dan Shechtman has also published with us. He was talking about Dan, so I thought it would be fitting to introduce him here. And he has published in several of our journals before he was awarded the Nobel Prize for Chemistry in 2011. All right, so now we are still talking about Springer nature, but mostly what I want to talk about is this graphic here on this slide. And what I want to draw your attention to is these three divisions. And when I talk about these three divisions, I am mostly talking about the entire publishing industry. Most large publishers and even large societies like IEEE, MRS, ASME, ASCE, they all offer some option of publishing open access in non-open access journals. That's what I want to talk about here. So the red part of the graphic that you see here are fully open access journals. The journal is open access. It only publishes open access articles. And you have to pay an article processing charge to publish in this journal if your paper is accepted. However, you also see here the traditional subscription-based journals where you submit an article, you don't have to pay as an author. If your article is accepted, it is published, and then an institution or the reader will buy access to read your article, right? But then we also see here these hybrid journals. What are these hybrid journals is what I want to talk to you about here. Hybrid journals are basically traditional subscription-based journals. So they are like these journals, but they offer the option for you to publish just your paper as open access. So if open access is important to you, but the journal you really like is not fully open access, don't be disheartened. There might be an option to publish open access even in a traditional subscription-based journal. So look for that option. Most journals will offer you that option. Okay. All right, and again, I want to highlight the same thing here. This is number of open access articles published by different publishers across the board. And I want to bring your attention again to the red parts. So you see this service is offered by most big publishers. And these red articles are the ones that are open access articles published in hybrid journals or in journals that are not traditionally open access. Okay, we will talk more about open access later, but now let's get back to why we published. So Shri Kiran Kumar said in the beginning that recognition is an important aspect of publishing. It is. Your work gets recognized when you publish in a good quality journal. You get recognized as the creator of that work. Okay, and to get published in high quality journals, you need three things. Okay, you need a logical manuscript structure. Dr. Narayan Murthy already talked about it. I will also cover a little bit about that. You need an efficient publication strategy. You need to find the right journal. You need to understand the requirements of those journals. And then you need to make a successful submission. So we're going to talk about these three sections in my presentation. And we're going to look at the elements of all of these. I will limit my discussion on manuscript structure because it has already been covered. Now, your goal is not only to be published, but also to be widely read in your field. That's very important. You want people to read your work and cite your work, okay? And citations are important for the journal, for the field, for your institute, for your lab, and for you as an individual to get recognized for your work. So, as I said, we publish to get recognition, but there are many reasons why we publish. One of the most important reasons is to get validation for the work that we have done. And validation comes through peer review and peer reviewers' comments and feedback on how to improve your work. Okay, so validation is important. Another important reason is to exchange ideas globally. So you're talking to people globally in most fields. So, and you are publishing so that people globally can read you. So language clarity is critical. Dr. Narayan Murthy already talked about it. Language clarity is important. Please write in a structured and concise manner. There is no need to use flowery language in scientific writing. It should be to the point, simple sentences. It is okay to repeat words in scientific writing. So always call a cat and not a feline. It's not required. Okay, so it's important to make sure that the language and structure of your paper is understandable by the global audiences that you are addressing. If you need help with language, there are many services, copy editing services, language editing services available out there to fit all budgets. Please look for them and find a service that will suit your needs if you need help with language. Now, I was delivering the same talk on Sunday to the IIT Madras Research Scholars Forum, and there was a question there, can I improve my own language? Yes, you can, but it's hard work. And I think Dr. Narayan Murthy also talked about reading. Reading is the short way to improve your language skills. And please, if you have the time, if you are willing to make a little bit of adjustment to your schedules, please spend time reading not only scientific articles, but also any well-written pieces of information, like well-written articles. If you like reading books, read books. It's important to read to improve a language. Okay. Now, another very important thing that I often get asked about in these workshops is the publishing timeline. Why does it take so long to publish a paper? Now, most of the time is spent in this section. Can you see my mouse moving on the screen? Can someone confirm?
Able to see.
Able to see.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah. So this section, where your paper is getting reviewed by peer reviewers, then you get feedback, you revise, it goes back for review. This is what takes the most time, and this is the most important part of publishing. As I said, the most important thing to do is to get our results validated through a jury of peers. Okay, and the timelines vary from journal to journal. You can't say that the timelines are dependent on publishers. Well, to a certain extent they are, but every publisher has a large number of journals, and every journal has a separate field, a separate editorial board, a separate review committee. So the timelines are entirely dependent on each journal. Okay, so most of our journals, the Springer Nature journals, actually give you an average timeline of the last year. So if you look at a Springer journal homepage, you will see something we called journal metrics. And on the journal metrics page, you will see what was the average time in the past calendar year for first review, for submission to acceptance, from submission to publication. You see all those timelines. So they give you an idea of how long a particular journal will take. And many publishers are now displaying such timelines on their journal homepages. So when you're selecting a journal, please look at the average timelines and see that it fits the needs that you have. Okay. Now I say 3 to 12 months here, but these are just average timelines. Some journals can take longer. Okay. And sometimes some journal will take slightly less time, but be careful if a journal is promising you a very quick publication time, like a week or 2 weeks or 2 days or something like that. And especially if they're charging you money for open access publication and you haven't heard of the journal, please be careful. It could be a predatory journal. So allow yourself enough time to be published in good quality journals. Okay. These are average timelines. Once again, I'm stressing, sometimes it can take longer. Dr. Narayan Murthy is still here, sir. Can you please tell me what was the average timeline of publication for the last couple of papers that you published?
Maybe typically around 3 to 4 months.
Okay, thank you very much. So 3 to 4 months, and it could be longer for some, and it also sometimes depends on the discipline. Okay, if it's a fast-moving discipline, then there are usually more number of reviewers available. Sometimes the reviewer community is smaller, or certain disciplines just take longer to review. So please allow yourself enough time to get yourself published in a good quality journal. And again, please be aware that peer review is a positive process. Very few manuscripts are accepted without any form of revision. 2 or 3 rounds of reviews are very common, sometimes even more. And rejection and revision are integral to the peer review process. Please don't be disheartened by a rejection or if you're asked to do a detailed revision, and please do not take peer reviewers' comments personally. They're not personally attacking you. They are just trying to make sure that the work that is published out there is rigorous, validated, and of high quality. And use the peer review comments positively to improve your work and resubmit it. Even if you get a rejection, use the peer reviewers' comments positively to improve the manuscript and then submit it to another journal. Okay. Now, one more important thing, if you don't have an ORCID ID, please try to get an ORCID ID. It's free. It takes 5 minutes. In the simplest terms, what I can say an ORCID ID is, it's like an Aadhaar number for researchers or a social security number. It's your unique identifier as a researcher. And it's good to have because it helps you get all the citations for your work allocated to your name, because sometimes there might be people with similar names working in similar fields, sometimes even in the same institute. So please make sure that you have the ORCID ID. Many journals have also made it free to have an ORCID ID when you submit a paper. And in the future, maybe more of them will make it mandatory for the ORCID ID to be entered while submitting a paper. So if you don't have one, go today and get it from orcid.org. Okay, let's talk a little bit about some publishing buzzwords. I'm mostly going to talk about the different types of citation, and then I'll give you just a very quick overview of open access, because we'll talk more about open access in detail later when we go to journal selection. So citations are important. Citations are sort of what I like to call the currency of research publishing. That's how everything gets calculated. Impact factors, H indices, everything is based on the number of citations. Okay. And citations to your work are important. That's why I said it's important to be read. Okay. So citations are important. Citation counts are important for you, especially if you are interested in citation-based indices like impact factors, or for your personal growth, the H indices. They're all based on citation counts. Now, let me demystify the impact factor a little bit. Okay, and please write this down, mark my words. The impact factor is assigned only by the Web of Science. Okay. So all these words you must have heard of. You must have heard of Web of Science. You must have heard of the Journal Citation Reports, JCR. You must have heard of the Science Citation Index, SCI. All of these come from one web resource called the Web of Science. The Web of Science is owned by Clarivate Analytics. Okay. And Web of Science indexes journals and assigns some of those journals the impact factor. That is the real impact factor. Don't be fooled by other impact factors, because very often I see that there are some journals, sometimes they're predatory, sometimes they're just like low, not very good quality journals. These are flashing impact factors, but when you go in and check, it's not the real impact factor. It's a sort of a pseudo impact factor assigned by some other sort of indexing service. Now, Web of Science has very strict criteria for indexing journals, and only journals that they index in their Science Citation Index or the Science Citation Index expanded have actually the impact factors assigned to them. If you are in doubt whether a journal really has an impact factor, especially if you haven't heard of the journal or the publisher before, you should go and check in Web of Science. Most of you have access to Web of Science through the institutional library. If you don't have access directly, please ask your supervisor or your librarian to help check if the journal actually has an impact factor. Okay. Then we come to Scopus. Scopus is also a very well-known indexing service. They assign their own rankings to the journals. So the ranking system, they have SJR, the Scopus Journal Rank, and SNIP, the Scopus Normalized Impact per paper. Scopus has more number of journals than Web of Science, but they also have a stringent review process for deciding what gets indexed in Scopus. Not all journals are indexed in Scopus. Google Scholar, on the other hand, is more of an aggregation database. So there might be journals in there which just have a publishing history. So I think Google Scholar wants a publishing history of a few hundred papers or 2 years, if I'm not wrong. And if the journal has been publishing for that long, it automatically becomes part of the list. At least that's how it was. So Google Scholar sometimes may also, if you're searching through Google Scholar, you might also end up with results of journals which are maybe not of the highest quality. So be careful, okay, when you're doing literature searches through any of these indices, okay. Then there are other indices depending on disciplines. There are many indices. Many of them have very stringent quality requirements, but they're usually smaller and more focused on individual disciplines. For example, PubMed indexes stuff that's related to medicine and biological sciences. Of course, we also have the EI Compendix, which is related more to engineering content. So there are many other indices that you will come across as you work on your research. Then we have something very interesting called altmetrics. What are altmetrics? Altmetrics are alternative metrics. So what are these alternative metrics and why alternative? They are not based directly on citations. Citations are citations to scientific work in other published scientific work, right? And all of these tools we talk about here are actually based on citation metrics, right? But alternative metrics provide other ways of judging the impact of a work. What are these other ways? Primarily social media. How many times was an article tweeted about? How many times did it appear in Facebook mentions? How many times did it appear in the mass media? So all of these are alternative metrics which are looking at the impact of an article on a much more inclusive level. So they're not only looking at the scientific impact of a scientific paper, but they're also looking at the social impact, if you like, of the paper, because anyone can tweet about an article, anyone can, put the link to an article on Facebook. So altmetrics are becoming popular, and as we grow into a more social media centric, global economy, we will see probably altmetrics gaining more popularity in the future. So I thought it was good to mention it to you here. And before I talk a little bit about what open access is, let's look at the impact factor here. Now, impact factor is a ratio, okay? It is a ratio of the number of citations that were achieved by indexed by a journal during a particular year. So impact factor is always annual. Currently, we are running with the 2019 impact factor. The 2020 impact factor will come out in, I think, summer this year, on May, June is when they come out with the new impact factors. So the number of times that all items published in a particular journal were cited in a particular year, but the articles should have been published in the previous 2 years. So 2019 impact factor looks at articles published in 17 and 18 and divided by the total number of citable items or papers published in that journal in 2017 and 2018. So it's simply a ratio of the number of citations received to the number of publications, okay, to the number of papers. And very important, I want to highlight indexed publications. So the citations for an impact factor of a journal only count if the citations were made by other journals indexed in Web of Science, okay? And pretty much all ranking related to citations is usually calculated with a similar ratio. It could be, the number of years could be different. I think for the SJR it's 3 years. You also have 5-year impact. Sorry, 5-year impact factors visible in Web of Science. So the number of years that it is calculated over could vary, but pretty much all impact calculations deal with citations versus publications. Okay. Now, quickly about open access, just to demystify it, the open access is a business model, okay? In the traditional publication model, you publish and you submit your article, it's published, and then the reader or the institute of the reader pays to buy access to the article so the reader can read. Now, in open access, this is switched, okay? So as an author, if you want to publish open access and your paper is reviewed and accepted by the journal, then you pay an article publication charge, or your funding agency or your institute pays an article publication charge or article processing charge, and then the reader reads for free. The article is available, open access articles are available to everyone to read and download for free. Okay. All right. Now let's move on to the next part. I'm not going to dwell too much on it because Dr. Narayan Murthy has already talked about what to do before you start writing your paper or start your research, but I really want to emphasize a couple of things here. It's very important to have a hypothesis or a research question. Sometimes I have seen papers where there is no real rationale or research question. It's usually like there is a literature review. It's not clear, what is finally gained from the literature review, what is the problem in the field, where is the gap in knowledge, and then there is, we did this experiment, there is the methodology, we got these results, there are the results, and the conclusion is usually a couple of lines saying that we did this experiment and we got this result. That's not enough to write a research paper. As Dr. Narayan Murthy also said in his presentation, it's very important to discuss your results. And how will you discuss them? You will discuss them in context of the field. You will discuss them in context of a problem that you're trying to solve. You will discuss them in context of a research question you're trying to answer or a gap in knowledge that you're trying to fill. So always ask yourself this: what is your research question? Okay. And then filter down to the aims of your study. You have a question, but you may not be able to answer it fully in this particular paper or this particular study. How far will you answer it? How will you answer it? What methods are appropriate? Okay. Do you have all of the relevant resources to go through those methods? If not, can you get access to those resources? So just a random example, let's say you need access to a wind tunnel of a certain length, but you don't have that at your institute. Well, can you go to IIT Kanpur or IISc and use their wind tunnel? If not, then what? If you don't have access to that wind tunnel, then what? How would you change your experiment? How would you change the design of your study? Okay. And always identify your controls. As I said, you may not be solving the problem fully in a single paper or a single study. You may only be going up to a certain point and then stopping. Where is that point? So in mathematical physics, I always say this, we have something called initial conditions and boundary conditions. Always identify your initial conditions. Where is the research question? What is the research question? Where is the problem? What is the gap that you're trying to fill? And the boundary conditions. How far are you going to go in this particular study? Okay, let's come to ethics. Let me take a sip of my water and we'll talk about publication ethics. Now, before I begin, I'm going to highlight this again when I end this section. Remember COPE. Committee on Publication Ethics. Okay, it's a not-for-profit, lots of good information available for authors, for reviewers, for editors of journals about ethical publication ethics and any problems that may arise related to publication ethics. Search for COPE Ethics on Google. It will take you to their homepage. Please look at this. If you have questions about ethics, or if you have an ethical dilemma you don't know how to solve, you can look for guidelines there. You can also, I think, request support from the committee if through a messaging service or an email service. So please go and take a look. They also have very helpful flow charts about what to do in case of an ethical issue. Okay, so let's get into the ethics. Everything you see here is something you should not do, ethics-wise. Multiple submissions are a complete no-no. Please do not submit the same article to multiple journals at the same time. Okay, it's very important. Also, since we are talking about scientific writing, not just journals, also with conference papers. If you are submitting a paper to a conference, don't submit the same paper to the journal. Okay. Or you tell the conference that I would not like this paper to be considered for publication because I am submitting it to a journal for publication. I would just like to come and present the paper. I would not be interested in publishing it. Do not publish the same paper in a conference proceedings and another journal. And also don't send the same paper to multiple journals at the same time. Okay. Coming back to conferences and journals, sometimes you can expand a conference article and publish it in a journal, but please be clear with both parties. Tell the conference or the publisher of the conference that I want to expand this article. So you might need to take certain permissions to reproduce parts of that article in your expanded article. And also in the cover letter to the journal editor-in-chief, please identify that this is an expanded version of the previous publication in a conference proceedings and clearly explain how expanded it is, what changes you have made, what additional material or studies you have included. Okay. And for journals, if you're submitting to one journal, please submit to that journal first and wait for a rejection before you submit to a second journal. If you think that the first journal is taking too much time in reviewing your paper and you have decided that this is not the right journal for you, then please withdraw your paper from the first journal, wait for a withdrawal confirmation, and then submit to a second journal. In most cases, the withdrawal is also automated through the electronic submission system, where you submit an article, you can also withdraw an article. If this is not available and you want to withdraw your article while it's in review, please write to the editor-in-chief via email and ask them to withdraw your paper. Okay. Now let's go to plagiarism. Now, plagiarism is a very complex term. I have heard a lot of things about plagiarism. So the most common thing I hear is what percentage is okay. Now, according to me, no percentage is okay. All right. And sometimes these percentages that you get from these overlap tools do not always clearly identify plagiarism. They're only identifying overlap of text, right? And it's important to understand that sometimes there might be 2% overlap, and it could be a case of plagiarism because somebody's core result has been copied by someone else. And in some cases, it might be a 40% overlap, and there is no plagiarism because it's actually just the tool catching phrasal matches. To give you an example, those of you who are from civil engineering would probably appreciate this. If you write reinforced cement concrete 30 times in a paper, it'll probably show you a 25 to 30% match. Okay, big phrase. Similarly, there are many phrasal matches that occur in different disciplines. And that's why each report of overlap should be ideally manually analyzed to check if there is it is actually a case of plagiarism, or even if the overlaps are warranted or not. Because in some cases, if it's just phrases like reinforced cement concrete is a very, very common phrase. So if it's just phrases, then there is no question that this is not really a case of an overlap, or just the tool identifying a rather common phrase. Okay. Now, To come back to plagiarism and its definition, there are two aspects to plagiarism. This is what I always say. One is the ethical aspect. And Dr. Narayan Murthy also talked about it a little bit. The ethical aspect is basically the problem that we are taking someone else's work and calling it our own. Okay? Or even if it is our own work, then in case of self-plagiarism, we are taking it and reproducing it. Which sort of distorts the version of record. And since we are talking about research publications here, which are original, usually original work or primary publications. In primary publications, originality or newness is important. So recycling the same work is also ethically problematic because it overemphasizes the importance of the previous work. Okay. Even if it's our own work, and also it sort of distorts the version of record, because if you are reproducing a paper that you have previously published in almost its entirety or a large part of it, then the references to the correct version of record are also distorted. Some people might be referring to, even if both papers are published by you, some people might refer to paper A, some people might refer to paper B, and so on. Okay, so this is the ethical problem around plagiarism. Then we have the legal issues related to third-party rights or intellectual property rights. When you are using content from another party where the copyright is owned by a third party, then using that content without the requisite permissions can lead to legal consequences. Okay, there are laws around intellectual property in most countries. Forgive me. So there are laws around intellectual property and copyright in most countries. Sorry about that. So it's important to respect those laws and stay within the legal parameters of intellectual property rights. Now, what to do when you really need to reuse something? Sometimes you do need to reuse something. You need to reuse. Okay, guys, you're going to have to give me a minute. I'm going to remove my mic so I don't cough in it. My apologies. So yeah, my throat's getting a bit dry. And those of you who are in Delhi might know that it's been dust storming for 24 hours here. So it's really crazy. Okay. So if you need to reuse something, for example, you might need to reuse a figure from one of your previous works or from another work which you're doing a comparison with, that's perfectly all right. Sometimes you do need to reuse content. In such cases, you need to make sure that permissions are taken where required and proper citations are always given to the previous work, even if it's your own work. Okay, you need to take permissions. Dr. Narayan Murthy showed you an example of a permission letter, but most of the times you don't need to sign a letter and send an email for permissions. Most large publishers, large societies have an automated permission system. You just need to go to the permission link for the paper you need permissions from, and you just need to answer a set of drop-down questions. And once you answer those questions, they will just generate a license and give it to you. Okay. So for a limited reuse, like a figure or two, or maybe little bits of text, most of the time there is no charge for reuse. And the permission document that you generate will also give you clearly how you should cite the reused material. Okay, so use that to put the citation and references properly. Okay, so don't be scared with permissions. It sounds very daunting, but it literally takes 5 minutes on one of these systems. Okay, so please take permissions where required, and also please do not copy paste text. And see, especially in scientific work, I mean, in law, I can understand that sometimes you need to make exact quotations of the laws that are being discussed. I can understand in philosophy that you need to make exact quotations of what another person has said to analyze what they're saying. But in scientific work, you don't need exact quotations even. So why copy paste text? Now, I know somebody is going to post this question, but what about the literature review? Literature review is not meant to be a section where you copy paste 1 or 2 lines from here and there. Literature review is meant to be a review of the work that you have read, understood, and then written as a review summary in your own words. Please write in your own words. You will never run into the problems of percentages. Okay. And even when you're taking notes, okay, and I partly blame the way we are educated in primary and secondary school, that we are asked to write exactly what's written in the textbook as answers. That sort of stays in your head. Do not, when you're making notes and reading literature, do not copy things as it is from the literature. Read a couple of paragraphs. Try to ask yourself, what did I understand from this, and write that. Don't copy even like segments from the paper or the literature that you're reading. So the simplest way to avoid plagiarism, I get this question also quite a lot, believe it or not, how to avoid plagiarism. Don't copy stuff, right? That's the simplest way to avoid plagiarism. Now, improper author contribution, another problematic issue. And it's important to understand that everyone who has made intellectual contribution to a paper should be acknowledged as an author, and anyone who has not should not be acknowledged as an author. Okay, there are cases of improper authorship which fall into, I think, broadly 3 categories, as I like to call them. There are ghost authors, there are guest authors, and there are gift authors. Okay. Now, ghost authors are basically people who have made intellectual contribution but have been left out. Guest authors are people who have not made an intellectual contribution but have been invited for some reason by one or more of the authors, because maybe their name lends more credibility to the paper, maybe there is some sort of other quid pro quo going on. It's not ethical, okay? And gift authors are often, it's rare, but it happens, where people are included in a paper. They have not contributed to the paper, but they're included in the paper for random reasons. And most of the time, they don't know that they have been included in the paper, okay? I actually faced this case very early on after I joined Springer, where a long-time author in the US, I have known him for many, many years, he called me and he said, my name has appeared on a paper which was published in one of the Springer journals, but I did not contribute to this paper. I don't know the other author at all. Okay. So then we started investigating, and we found that this one author had actually met this gentleman, the senior professor from the US, at a conference and asked for some advice. And this gentleman gave him some advice. This other author was a student. And the student, because it really helped him get the right direction for his work, included as a sort of a gesture of reverence or acknowledgement, included this person's name as an author. That is not ethical. Okay. Only people who have directly contributed to the work should be authors, not someone who advised you, guided you, or even helped you find a direction for your study. Unless they really directly worked with you and contributed to the paper, they should not be included. If you must acknowledge people, please you do so in the acknowledgement section. So the right thing for the student to have done would have been to acknowledge this professor in the acknowledgement section for his help. Okay. And also with ghost authors, I want to clarify that it's important to understand we are talking about intellectual contribution. Again, there is a case I remember where we got a complaint that this one person complained to us saying that my colleague and I worked on this paper together, but he submitted the paper without my name on it. So then we asked the author who had submitted the paper, why did you exclude your colleague? And this person said, I kept asking him to write something, at least write the method section or the results section or something. He didn't write even a word. Okay. Now, writing a word is not required for an intellectual authorship contribution to a research paper. Okay. It's important to understand we're talking about intellectual contribution, not writing actual words. You must have seen sometimes in case of experimental physics, for example, there are hundreds of authors on a paper. Do you think all of them sit and write a few words each of the paper? No. They all have significantly contributed intellectually to the paper, primarily because experimental physics data sets are huge and they need a lot of experts in different domains to make sense of the data sets. Okay, so it doesn't mean that if you haven't written a word and have made significant intellectual contribution to the work, you are still supposed to be acknowledged as an author. Okay. All right, then the next, and of course, one more thing, because we are currently dealing with this case also. Remember, if you are students who are under supervision by a faculty member, your supervisor has equal rights to the work. Okay, we are just recently dealing with a case where a PhD thesis was converted into a book, and the supervisor was not acknowledged as an author, and he was not even consulted. Okay. We didn't know that this was based on a thesis, which was later brought to our attention. So make sure that you include your supervisor. If your supervisor doesn't want to be a co-author on your work, get a letter of consent which says they're okay with you publishing the work on your own. Okay, always get a clearance or include your supervisor. Your supervisor has rights, intellectual rights to the work that you are doing with them. Okay. Now, data fabrication, falsification is a complete no-no. Please remember, I think almost all of you would have conducted the simple pendulum experiment in high school. And I am pretty sure most people actually, when they want to get the perfect curve, delete some points. So I won't be, surprised if all of you are sitting there at home and nodding your heads. Okay, so don't do that. Do not fabricate data. Do not delete the outlier points to make it fit the curve. Do not hide or falsify data. Okay, and make sure that you are able, if you're doing whatever data manipulations you're doing, let's not call them manipulations, analysis or interpretations, let's call them that you're doing to present your results, you should be able to say that you are doing that. If you feel the need to hide something that you have done, some operations that you have done on your data, then it is probably not the right thing to do. And that is like the mantra for anything related to ethics. If it is something that you fear could make you be embarrassed or scared if it were to come out in public, please don't do it. Okay, it's probably, if you feel the need to hide it, it's probably not the right thing. And also, since I was talking about data manipulation, there is a saying that if you torture data long enough, it will admit to anything. Please don't torture data. Okay, please be kind with your data, present all the facts that you have received, and present it in a way that you don't feel the need to hide anything. Very important. Okay. And once again, I would like to reiterate here what Dr. Narayan Murthy said. Please keep all your data. Since we're talking about data, this doesn't have so much to do with ethics, but please keep all your raw data. Because sometimes reviewers may ask for data that you have not included in the paper, but there's some background work that you have done, but they want to see it. I actually remember a case. One of the students I was once working with from 90. I'm sorry. I'm just getting a message that I have to conclude by 12:25. Yes, I know that. What time is it now? Oh, okay. So there was this case, the student that I was working with who had submitted a paper, and the paper, when it was being reviewed, reviewers were asking that we need to see the raw data. And this experiment was sort of longer. It took a while to get all the data. And the student had actually lost the data that they were working with, like the raw data. They didn't think that once they had structured their data into figures and tables and everything they needed, that they needed additional, there was additional need for the raw data. So there was some delay, and then to provide that data, he had to redo parts of the experiment. So that's why be sure to keep your data, your raw data and your experimental parameters. Also, important to have the ethical clearances. If you're using human subjects and animals, follow the ethics guidelines. Sometimes you need clearances also. And also, please use proper terminology for differently abled people. This is a case that we recently dealt with, where there was a paper which was discussing technology for enabling hearing impaired and speech impaired people to communicate better, and it was using terms which are not considered correct. So if you are using terms for disabled or differently abled people, please use the American Physical Association's guidelines, the APA guidelines, or the terminology that is to be used. Even the term disabled is not the correct term to use. You have to use the correct terminology for all of the differently abled people. It's available in the APA guidelines. Please use them. Okay. You want more on ethics? There is information available on Springer and nature.com. Now, very important, I think Dr. Narayan Murthy also talked about this. So what do journal editors want? It's not a black box. Journal editors are looking for good quality science that will stand up to peer review, that will be original research, it will be interesting to the journal's readership, and it will be an active area which will garner many citations for the journal, and most importantly, clear and concise writing, which is easily understandable. Now, I am not going to go into the manuscript structure, as I said. I just want to highlight a couple of things which there were also questions about in the chat box that I was answering while Dr. Narayan Murthy was speaking. In the title, remember, it's a set of keywords for indexing. So be as specific and concise as possible. State what was investigated, what was measured, and the sample the measurements were taken from. Do not use questions in your title, avoid describing methodology in your title, and avoid abbreviations and acronyms, okay? And to give you an example of why you should avoid abbreviations and acronyms, let me tell you an acronym, and I'll come back to this in the Q&A session, okay? SHM, SHM. You can put it in the chat box. What does it mean to you? SHM. What does this acronym or abbreviation mean to you? Okay. Now, also important not to write titles like this, because you see here, this looks like an abstract. It's actually a title. So write short, concise titles that are easy to understand. Again, in the abstract, there was a question: avoid references, avoid abbreviations, be brief, and ideally write your abstract in the introduction, methods, results, and discussion model. Okay. This is intro, method, results, and discussion. One line of each will make your 150-word abstract. Okay. And don't worry, I have already sent the handouts of these slides to the organizers. Hopefully they can be shared with you. Also, with keywords, be very specific. Do not write vague or generic keywords like this. Provide actual scientific terms that appear in your paper to improve search engine optimization. It's okay to have phrases as keywords. You don't need single words every time. Okay. And these are the 4 core questions you should answer in your 4 core sections. I think Dr. Narayan Murthy also talked about this. I'm skipping over this because you've already discussed this. And also, I'm going to skip quickly over. There are lots of examples in here for you to look at. So please do look at them. I'll send the deck to you. I think. Second, yeah. So I want to dwell here a little bit. So Dr. Narayan Murthy also talked about this. Please put everything about your table or figure in the caption. Describe it in the caption. It is okay to have a big caption, and even explain any abbreviations you have used in the table in a footnote to the table or the figure. Similarly, again, make sure the axes are labeled, data is separated out into smaller graphics where necessary so it's easier to read. And always be humble in your discussion. Please don't use strong terms like prove or show. Your work has not yet been reviewed, so it's not up to you to say whether you have proven or shown something. Use milder terms like suggest, imply, and indicate. And print this out and use it. Once again, make sure you identify the problem or the gap in the field, relate your objectives to it, relate the results to the objectives, and in the discussion section, relate the implications to the problem in the field. Okay, now let's look at choosing the most appropriate journal. Is this the journal with the highest impact factor? Not necessarily. It is the journal that will best maximize the impact of your work for your target audience. So be mindful when choosing journals. And for whom are the findings relevant? Are they relevant only for a specialized audience? Are they relevant for a broader audience? Make sure that you choose a journal based on how specialized your work is. And of course, how much accessibility do you need? Is it okay to publish in a subscription-based journal? Do you need open access? Do you have the open access choice with a fully open access journal? If not, will one of the subscription-based journals you like publish open access? Please find out. Benefits of open access. One of the primary benefits is sometimes funding agencies or institutions mandate that you have to publish open access articles out of the project funding that you have received, and the funding for publishing also comes from the funder. It increases accessibility because it is open and free for everyone to find. It increases the number of downloads for the same reason. Most of the cases, the copyright is retained with the author for open access articles. They're published under a Creative Commons license usually. And they are often published quicker in the sense that most open access journals are online only. They don't have a print issue associated with them. So the timelines for assigning articles to print issues, because print issues are limited, go away. So quickly published in that sense. Similarly, for the same reason, fewer restrictions on word and figure limits because this is online only. So no restrictions related to print. Very important, as I said, not all open access journals are good. The open access business model is often misused by predatory publishers or predatory journals. So look at all of these parameters. Look for reputable publishers. Look for international and familiar editorial boards. Look that they are indexed by common databases. I talked about it. It should have the Web of Science impact factor if it is claiming to have an impact factor. And if it's a good quality, high quality journal, you should be able to recognize some of the authors. Some top experts in your field should have published. And all good quality open access journals will only ask for the fees to be paid after your after your paper has been accepted after peer review. Never before that. You still need help, please check out thinkchecksubmit.org. This is a checklist. They provide a checklist and they say only submit if you can answer yes to all of these questions, specifically for open access journals. If you need help finding journals on a certain topic, all publishers have journal suggester tools, search-based journal suggester tools available. Please look for them. You can put in your abstract or your manuscript in here, and it will give you some journals which actually fit in the subject area of your particular field. All right, so I am almost done. I know I have 5 minutes, but this section I'm not going to take too much time. Dr. Narayan Murthy again has already said this. Most journal editors are doing this in addition to their full-time jobs. Please respect the time of the editors and the reviewers. It's important to put in a cover letter which conveys all of the important points for the journal editor to understand what your manuscript is about. So this is what should go in a cover letter. What is your manuscript about? What kind of manuscript are you sending in? Is it an original article? Is it a case study, a review article, and so on? Why is this important? A brief background and research problem and aims. Talk about study design and 1 or 2 key results. A couple of lines of conclusion and how this will be interesting to the journal's readership. Okay. Now, I often get asked this question. How do we know who is the journal's readership? The simplest answer, people who publish in a journal typically also read it. So look at who are the authors publishing in the journal. Are those the right authors for you? That should be another deciding factor in choosing the journal. And it is and this is the readership that you want to address. Okay. And you can also provide additional information about including and also excluding reviewers. Sometimes you might have a conflict with another group who's doing similar work and you don't want them to review your work. Then just mention that these people should be excluded from the reviewers. And you should talk about publication ethics. How? You should declare that the work is original and unpublished. It has not been submitted to other journals. All authors agree. on the paper and the selection of the journal, declare any conflicts of interest, declare the source of funding, and clearly highlight the authorship contributions of who has done what. Very important. Okay. So once you have convinced the editor that the manuscript is suitable, goes to peer reviewers. Again, I want to stress, peer review is a positive process. Take it as such. Okay. And now writing response letters, I have only one important thing to highlight. Everything else is here. So you see that always make it easy to review the revisions. Highlight them, use track changes in Word, explain exactly what you have done based on the reviewer's comments. If you disagree with any comments, explain why you disagree. It is okay to disagree. Usually you should support disagreement with evidence which comes in the form of other publications, right? And explain why you would not like to take certain comments under advisement. And remember, address all of their comments or questions. Don't leave out some comments or questions because you consider them irrelevant. Even if you don't consider them relevant, explain why. And very important, I'll end with the last example. Now, imagine you get a reviewer comment saying you have not cited papers X, Y, and Z by John Smith et al. They are very relevant to this work and should be cited here. And you go back and say, oh, John Smith et al. Don't know what they're talking about. We don't want to sign their papers. We don't want to cite their papers. And remember, in most cases, the information of the reviewer is not visible to the author. So you might be, sending that comment back to John Smith himself. So be polite in whatever you say. There is another way of saying that we don't want to cite these papers. For example, you can say, John Smith et al. Have done excellent work in this area. However, it is not directly relevant to the work we are doing. Our work is more aligned to what Johnson et al. Have done in papers A, B, and C, and we have cited those papers. And also, Johnson's work has not cited Smith's work because it's not directly relevant. So we would like to excuse ourselves from citing these papers. Be polite, be humble, very important. Okay, and don't sit around after your article is published. Share it on social media, share it at conferences, send it to people who can access it and read it. And there is a very easy way to share it at Springer Nature. So from day one, even if your paper is not open access, you can send anyone this shareable link, which is available on all Springer Nature journals and also for our conference proceedings. You can take this link, share it directly from our platforms, or copy it and post it on a social media platform. Use WhatsApp, email, send it to anyone. Whoever clicks on this link can read the whole paper from day one. They cannot download it. They cannot print it unless they have access. Now, I have access, so you see the download button. Those people who don't have access will not be able to download it, but they will get a buy access button. But most people don't need to download and print your paper. Most people just want to read and cite it. So use this feature, share your work, and make sure that your work gets read and cited. So now you have a logical structure, publication strategy, and a successful submission. You will increase your chance of publication and your research impact. Very important. If you want more information on tutorials, they're available on springernature.com and springer.com for you. And with that, I end my presentation. I am 1 minute over. I am sorry for that. And we can answer some questions now.
I think we should compliment Swati for a different dimension altogether. Exactly complementing what Dr. Murthy told, and it becomes, I think, full meal for everybody who is attending now, and a starter and actual meal and dessert, of course, definitely. And I think most of the people who are venturing into paper publishing and those who are already doing will better get benefited. I think this is a topic ever growing, and many more complexities are going to come. So I think you people are updating, continuously updating, and we'll be continuously having this kind of webinars and workshops in future also, going into details of case presentation, failure analysis, review articles separately, research original manuscripts separately, like that we can go into. And even Kiran Kumar sir was also telling that editing and reviewing, peer reviewing also is an art actually. Peer reviewing reviewers and editors also is an art. We should go into that also, so that those who are aspiring to become editors also can be there. All these areas we need to see that the gap is so large between the second and third and first and third. I saw that 135 and 500 and 400, some were totally different. It's not the quantity actually, maybe the quality also matters a lot. We should quantify and qualify also into and get into this kind of a circle where India emerges a totally different country altogether in the coming decade. These are all stepping stones for all these things. And you know the kind of people who watch it all over the globe, right from Philippines and right from Canada, I'm good commenting, I'm getting Ethiopia, I'm getting comments. So I think it's a global thing, and not a single adversary comment. Everybody is complimented and all got benefited. And thank you so much for both the speakers. Wonderfully done. And a good round of applause to you all from all the audience and all of us here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, madam. So then now we will move on to the interactive session. So I request the interested participants attending online to raise their hands. Those are interested to ask questions. So now we will pick up questions one by one. Nirmama, can you read the names?
Yeah.
Those who raised the hand.
Anjali Sonkaria.
Anjali, are you available online?
Okay.
Anjali?
First he is selected.
Yeah, yeah.
It takes some few seconds to come back.
Okay. The first question we will take from Anjali. We are enabling them. Yeah. Anjali,
Yeah, nice. Just to come.
You can make your audio and video both visible so that you can speak to us directly and ask questions directly to the any of the speakers. Possible.
Anjali, are you available?
Or we can go to the next person then.
Yeah.
We can come back to Anjali later.
Yes. We will go to Sudeep Kumar Kundu.
Kundu, are you available?
Sir.
Take some time. Maybe we can give some time for them to come to the screen. We had alerted them also.
Mr. Kundu, please switch on your mic and video.
Some of the questions I think both the speakers have answered directly, so we are avoiding them on the chat box. So and people ask for presentation. It is available in the Facebook. ISRO Facebook. It is available. You can take it directly from the Facebook. The entire set is available.
Other people also.
You enable a few more people.
Enable
To see
few
who is
more
coming
people.
here. Manjur Hasan, are you available?
Manjur Hossain.
Who's there now?
Nirmal Kumar. Download the software.
Yeah. Is there
We
any
are enabling
No,
them.
sir, normally it takes
It takes some time.
yesterday also when we tried, no, it took some time.
It takes some time. We'll wait. 1 minute. We'll wait.
But you can enable a few more people.
Yeah.
Yeah, enough. I think. Enough. I think.
Bottom will be available. So they would have. Yeah.
Gyanendra Kumar. Gyanendra
Yeah.
Kumar.
One by one.
Can you please?
One. You or
Yeah, please come.
Ankit.
Ankit Gupta.
Yeah, yes, sir. It's my
Yeah,
voice.
please. Yeah, you're seen and you're audible also. Please continue.
Yeah. Gajendra also.
Rajendra Kumar and Ankit Gupta. Okay, Ankit Gupta can speak now.
Yes, sir. Thank you to all first to have this wonderful session. So I have a specific question to Sri ma'am. Like ma'am, if during the peer review process, if I found like my raw data has been lost, partially. So should I retract? Should I convey this onto the journal editors, or should I retract my manuscript from the journal? What should I do in that situation?
Ankit, it's not always the case that people will ask you for the raw data, but in the future, it's our recommendation. I think Dr. Narayan Murthy will back me up here. Please keep your data. And if you have already submitted a manuscript and you have lost some raw data, in case the reviewers ask for it, then you can declare it. But it's not always that the reviewers will ask you for the large sets of raw data.
I agree with you.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay.
Gajendra Kumar.
Gajendra Kumar, Jnanendra Kumar. Yeah, please. You can speak now.
Sir, thank you for your for such kind of lectures. Actually, I want to ask some questions related to reviewers' comments and all. Actually, I sent a publication and I got a 3 reviews on that paper. And in three reviews, they are abrupt reviews. They are not related to my paper also. They just copied some 5 or 10 points and copied in the reviewer's comments and rejected the paper. What should I do then? Narayan Murthy sir, can you please tell?
Yeah. Okay. You want me to answer? So all the 3 reviewers have identical comments, or they have different comments?
Sir, one comment is not relevant to the paper, and another comment is in Chinese language, and one has specified something.
So why don't you write? I think I would recommend you to write to the editor of the journal that the comments are irrelevant. They are not related to my manuscript, and I request you to go through the manuscript, or you can even suggest that you can send it for. If they are not relevant, you can ask for sending for some other reviewers. So that would be ideal, because you are saying, yeah, editor will take a view on that. You can always communicate with the editor on your whatever questions you have. So clearly your case is a case where the comments are not related to your manuscript, you are saying. So better be in touch with the reviewer. Yeah, directly you write to the editorial office, say that these are not the comments for my paper and I don't agree with them, or they are different. So please be in touch and try to get an answer. That's what I feel.
Sir, what
Madam,
I
maybe
did is I changed my manuscript. Somewhat I changed my manuscript, and I write a cover letter to editor also. He straight away reject my second and didn't reply anything.
Okay. Okay, then in that case, you can go for another journal. So if you feel that your manuscript has good technical content, you can go for an alternate journal in that case.
Okay, thank you.
Shivani Verma.
Shivani Verma, can you please?
Yeah. Shivani can speak.
Yes, sir. My question is to Swati ma'am. That ma'am, what is the difference between ESCI, SCI, and SCI e-journals?
Okay, very good question. All right, so it's all Web of Science. ESCI is the Emerging Sources Citation Index, also Web of Science. ESCI is now the first step of indexing in Web of Science. ESCI journals do not have an impact factor. Okay, and the rest of it, which goes into the JCR or the Science Citation Index, the journals which have impact factor, they have 2 levels. SCI is the top 10% journals in each discipline. Okay. So if a discipline has 100 journals with impact factors listed in Web of Science, the SCI journals of that discipline will be the top 10%. So top 10 journals ranked by impact factor. And SCIE is all of the rest of the journals which are indexed in Web of Science. They have an impact factor, but are not the top 10% journals. Okay, so I hope that clarifies. ESCI not yet have an impact factor, first step of indexing in Web of Science. Then you get the second step where they're indexed in the Science Citation Index, and they get a impact factor, but the top 10% are known as SCI and the rest are known as SCIE or SCI expanded.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Okay, Animesh Kumar. Can you please raise your question? Animesh Kumar, available? Go to Dr. Aram.
Vikas Singh is there. Vikas Singh from NARL.
Hello.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yeah, audible. Please continue.
Yeah, sorry, I don't have video. So my question is, what are the options available with author in the case we submit a paper which goes under review, long review process, more than 2 months. Meanwhile, somebody submitted a paper and that paper got published on the similar results. And then the paper comes with a region of rejection that a similar study has been published. What are the options left with the author in that case? The author submitted the paper first, somebody submitted later on, and because of the faster publication elsewhere, they got published. But this was still review. We are respecting the timeline of the reviewers. We are not in hurry. We cannot pressurize the editor or reviewer to go for faster publication. So we respected them. But the reason of rejection was somebody already published that paper. What are the options left?
Yeah, if I have to answer this question, do you have duplication of data? Is the same data presented or the data is entirely different?
It is a similar nature, but the data is not same.
Not same. Okay. Do you have connection? I mean, you know the others. Do you feel that somewhere there is some problem? I mean, you suspect something?
No. There is no conflict of interest or anything. The only thing is that one publication, one journal has a faster publication policy where they have published papers in 3 to 5 days. Recently, last year I'm talking. Whereas some journal, they had publication policy to go for through proper peer review, which takes time. Expected time is more or less 60 days. So just somebody's in that case.
No, my answer is like this. I don't think any journal has a 3 to 5 days acceptance policy. Okay, that is one. I don't think what kind of journal you are talking about. Even 2 months itself is very surprising that a very standard journal, very reputed journal, 2 months if somebody is accepting that itself is a very good thing. Now, if you don't suspect anything fishy in this particular episode, there is always a possibility that somebody else is also working on similar thing and they can get published, and you also can publish your own work. I don't think there is. It is impossible that 2 similar studies are not published. So you can send it proudly to another journal, maybe with a different kind of discussion. So I mean, this is very difficult to digest. You can send it. Madam can also proudly reply.
Okay, so let me recap the problem. You submitted a paper and then another similar study was published in another journal meanwhile while your paper was in review. Now, if your paper was submitted before, most top good journals use a submission system which has a date of record of the submission. Okay, in this case, the submission should take priority. So please talk to the editor-in-chief. This is something that needs to be resolved, I think, between the 2 journals. It's not something that we can comment on too much as publishers, but that's one way of identifying who submitted their paper before, because the submission system has a date of submission.
Yes, so in that case,
DOI are coming nowadays. DOI and DOR are coming nowadays, as Swati clearly pointed out. Both are coming nowadays. So which is having date of recipients and other things. Everything is now coming. Date of recipient, DOR, DOI. Everything is coming properly now. Okay, there is an international DOI number now. Am I right, madam?
Yes, sir, but the DOI is only assigned once the paper is published, but the date of acceptance is available in the system from the day the paper is submitted, and this is visible to the editor-in-chief of the journal.
A date of acceptance may be, but a date of receipt may be, you can DOR may be there, that is more relevant here, no? Am I right?
Yeah, date of submission, yes. You can find the date of submission.
Yeah, I'm talking about the last year when some journals, respected journals, because of the COVID, they reduced, they went for faster publications. A lot of COVID work came much faster within a short and quick review time, short duration of review process. But at the same time, some journal, they took longer. So we have all the records. We requested with the same thing that our study was submitted before than their study. Still, we had written rebuttal letter with disagreement to the editor, but at the end it is rejected. So means I don't know how we make the case in that case. I don't think it is my mistake. It is a one journal going for faster publication and one journal going for slower, means normal speed. So what are the options left with us? This I want to know in the future if this kind of situation comes. And we are also want to publish. We also want to publish in a given journal. We don't want to go to other journal.
Because I don't think this situation comes often, because this is a very rare occasion it has come. One more thing I can tell you, this 5 days publication itself is an unethical practice by the journal itself. It's not by the author. It's a journal unethical way of publishing. 5 days means no peer-reviewed journal can have a publication 5 days. Such journals will not be able to sustain also. They may perish also in the coming years. I don't think. I think Swati Madam can comment on this, because I don't think there are quality journals who can publish. Even 2 months is surprising.
Sir, I cannot comment on what journal this was, because I don't know, and I don't think this is the right platform to discuss this. But I agree with Vikas that there were journals which were turning around COVID-related work very quickly. So it is possible that it was a good quality journal which did turn around the work very quickly.
You can go to the next.
Next, Ajay is there. Ajay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Am I audible?
Audible, Ajay.
Yeah, thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much, sir, for it was a very great presentation and very informative. I have a simple question that I'm in now MTech final year, and I have done some original work and I want to publish it. So I want to know from where should I start? Should I start writing the abstract or introduction or literature review? And one more thing, like where could I get the formats? Like these are the this fonts needs to be this much, all those information, little bit information.
Okay, probably, okay, you should go through our presentation materials. Already it was discussed. It was presented in a step-by-step method, how to write. So the sequence is given. Everything is very, very clearly, lucidly given in the presentation. Probably you should go through the presentation material that is available. And you should also read some of the journal articles in your area. So you will get a good idea about it.
Okay, sir. Okay. Thank you, sir. Yeah.
All the best.
Yeah. You will go to Atul, sir.
Hello.
Atul, sir.
Hello, sir. Am I audible?
Okay, Aram Narayan is on.
Okay. Please continue.
Okay.
Sir, am I audible?
Yeah. Aram Narayan can continue.
Actually,
Yeah, please.
in terms of plagiarism, when we write the literature review, we have to quote the others' work, and we are citing them properly in the literature review part. That is the introduction part. We are writing the literature review. So we are writing the summary or some of the interesting point which has been observed in their work has been referred as a literature review. So when we quote and properly cite the literature, it is showing somewhere, see, some 3 or 4 continuous words is shown as a plagiarism in Turnitin. So is there any specific norms for literature part of plagiarism?
Madam, you can.
What is the norm for?
We have properly cited the paper in the reference and also in the mid of the introduction part or the literature part. Okay, but when we run the plagiarism software, it says that there is a 4 or 5 continuous words which is relevant to that particular paper, which is already cited, is shown as a plagiarism.
Okay, once again, I would like to.
Usually, in
Sir,
journals.
Yeah, I think Madam is answering. Narayanan, Dr. Narayanan, Madam is answering. Please listen.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Yeah, Dr. Narayanan, could you mute yourself? I'm getting feedback of my own voice. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, so as I said, please be careful when using the overlap tools. It's only highlighting an overlap. Like you said, it's 4 or 5 words. It's not telling you that it's plagiarism. It's probably common terms of the literature review that are being highlighted. Be careful. The overlap tool is not talking about plagiarism. It's only talking about overlap of text. Okay. So if there is no actual overlap, that you have not taken content from anywhere and it's only 4 or 5 words here or there, then it's just a phrasal overlap. And whoever is going to review your manuscript will also consider that it is a phrasal overlap. There is no real overlap from already published materials.
I would like to add a little more actually, because Dr. Narayan and Swati also can just endorse if it is okay, because I've seen this kind of plagiarism softwares being made. If you straight away take the phrases from even if you quote Narayanan, you take the phrases what is there in the this one, it will show that, because it is from the reference also, it takes same phrases and it will compare and see it is a plagiarism is 10%. So if you are also taking a material from the cited book also, try not to take the exactly same phrase and words, rephrase it and put in a different pattern, same content, no problem. This will not happen. That is my experience. Thank you.
Sir, one
We'll
small
move on to the
request, sir.
next question
Suppose
then.
We are going to the
is
next
being
question,
collected.
please. We are going to the next question here because we have got limited time.
Yeah. Arun Sharma.
Before we go to the next question, I would just like to address a couple of things from the chat box. One is the fact that I asked you all to define SHM, and I see many people have defined simple harmonic motion. But if there are any structural engineers here, you must know of structural health monitoring, which is also called SHM. So that was my example. An acronym or an abbreviation or a jargon term can mean different things for different people. So don't use them in your title and abstract, because your title and abstract are meant for the right people to find your work. And if you use acronyms which are not, which can have other meanings, it's difficult for the right people to find your paper. So that's why we advise not to use abbreviations, acronyms in the title and abstract of the paper. And also there was a comment which I read, can we share our work on ResearchGate and other platforms like that? Now there are publishers' guidelines to what can be shared on such platforms and when. Usually in a traditional subscription-based journal, you need to allow for 1 year after publication when you can share the author's final version of the manuscript on such platforms. Or you can share the shared it link I showed you that we provide at Springer Nature. I think some other publishers also provide something similar. You can share that from day one. It is a legal way to share your work with other researchers. And if you have published an open access article, then you can just share the link to the open access article through any of these platforms. Okay, I wanted to clarify this. Okay, let's go to the next question.
Hello.
Sharma. Yeah, please.
Hello,
Abdul
sir.
Sharma, please.
Sir, actually, I have just started my PhD work, so for that I am going for the literature survey. So whatever ma'am and sir has discussed, I have gone through all the parts, different the structure of a paper. So now I have started reading the background literature of pertaining to my title. So in a paper, which areas I should focus on to study to make a good literature survey actually?
Can you repeat last sentence?
Sir, means ki in a paper, while I'm doing some background literature work, which areas should I focus on? How to study means how to get the maximum info from a paper.
No, the area in which you are working, you have to do a literature survey. So if your area is
Yes,
a
sir.
particular, yeah, so you need to go on searching articles in that area and try to read them and try to see what is the gap you are finding and try to write what you have to go and search in the net or in the scientific journal websites what are the typical papers or review articles in that area and get the information from them.
Okay, shall we go to the next question? Kundu, can you please ask your question?
Am I audible?
Audible,
Hello, am I audible? Actually, sir, my question is when I am going to write a manuscript in interdisciplinary subject, especially, okay, and like where the remote sensing background will be there, and some actually basically it is the marine fisheries, the research is, and there is also the social impact of this different marine advisories like potential fishing zone, ocean state forecast advisories, and what is the social impact of this. So in these cases, so many subjects are coming, means interdisciplinary it means. So in this context, when I am going to write a paper and try to submit somewhere, it's become a problematic for us. Means every to get a suitable manuscript, suitable journal where I can submit it, because we have submitted for journals where they have said that this journal is not fit for this, and you can go this journal. They are also suggesting something, but in these cases I am just trying to know from you that which journal should I go for this manuscript submission, because these are the background of my work. So can you please help me in this regard?
Shall I take this question? Okay. See, one of the how to select the journal is already told. Here, what are the journals you have referred in your introduction section? Okay, that is a primary thing. You would have referred some 10 journals in your introduction section. So those papers, where they are published, what is the journal in which they were published? You see first. Second thing is, you identify whether you are talking about the more on fish or more on how to locate the fish. So depending on the area where you are contributing, what is the title of your talk, title of your article? So you should select based on that. So identify the area. What is the core area in which you are trying to prepare a manuscript or the title? And if it is a statistics related one, you have to go for Journal of Statistics. If it is talking about remote sensing, you have to take the remote sensing journal. So there are wide variety of journals nowadays. And the basic thumb rule is where you have referred in your introduction, those papers are the ideal things, those journals are the ideal things where you can submit.
So we would like to ask to take two more questions. Mallikarjun, are you available? Mallikarjun.
This will be the.
Yeah, Mallikarjun, please continue.
Please unmute, then ask.
Please, yeah.
Sir, good afternoon to everyone. I especially thanks to the resource persons, Swati ma'am and SVS Narayanamurthy sir for sharing the valuable things. So now my question is, so what is the best time to publish a review article in a particular domain when a person joined in a PhD course?
May I take it?
Okay.
Yeah, please go
So
ahead.
can I comment one personal opinion, and I'll hand it over to you. I think I responded to that in the questions chat box also. In my personal opinion, I think that review articles have the most value when they're written by experts who have several years of experience in the field. Okay, so always my recommendation to young researchers is to concentrate on original research, because review articles only get the authority and the full picture when people have been working in the field for many, many years. That's my personal opinion. Dr. Narayanamurthy, please, over to you.
Yeah, very well said, very well answered. One more point I want to add. You may be getting tempted to write review articles in not so reputed journals. For example, I'll give an example of Progress in Material Science, which is supposed to be in materials area topmost journal. When you are submitting itself, they'll ask how many publications you have published in this area in the last 20 years. So it is too early to think of a review article as a PhD scholar. Please do original research. Please try to become a scholar in that area, a master in that area, and then try to go for review articles. Probably it takes about a couple of decades to write at least a very authoritative article in these kind of areas. Okay, unless you are a co-author with your professor in some articles. This is how typically a review article is written. Thank you.
So one more question we will take.
Thank you.
Yes. But can you ask your question? Okay, Sudhendra Kumar. Okay, Sudhendra Kumar, go ahead.
Sir, this is Satyendra Kumar. Thank you, Madam and Sir, for your valuable presentations you have made. It was really very interesting and very informative to see the presentations go through. So my question is actually, Madam or Sir, whoever you may feel right to answer, that there are two ranking systems like Web of Science and SciMago rankings. And is there any difference, and which one is more relevant, like for general rankings?
Okay, Satyendra, there are two completely different tools. It's like, okay, let me give you an example. It's like the Golden Globe Awards and the Oscars. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So, all right. So so those of you who couldn't hear him well, let me explain the question. Okay, let me explain the question. Once he asked which of the Web of Science or Scopus are more relevant.
I'm not asking of Scopus. I'm sorry, ma'am, to interrupt. I'm not asking of Scopus. I'm saying of SciMago rankings.
Yes, SciMago is based on Scopus. The data comes from Scopus. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So he's asking about these two the systems of indexing. They're indexing systems. Okay. And they are like two different indexing systems. As I said, it's sort of like the Golden Globes or the Oscars. It's two different systems for indexing and evaluation of journals. So I can't say which one is more relevant. It depends on your field. It depends on your community, what they find most relevant. So it's two different things. Okay, and the impact factor is given by, I think I saw another mention somewhere of the impact factor. Impact factor is given by Web of Science. If you have access to Web of Science, please check. Your institute usually has access to Web of Science. If you're not sure if the impact factor has been shown is correct, ask your institute or your supervisor or your librarian to help you ascertain that the journal is listed in Web of Science. Okay.
So one more question you will take from Patil.
Patil, yeah. This is the last question.
Yeah, it's the last question. Patil.
Can the conference published paper can be taken for the book chapter publication?
I'm sorry, can you repeat your question, please?
Can a conference published paper can be taken for book chapter publication?
Okay, first of all, conference publications and book chapters are two different things. A conference publication is usually an original article or a primary resource, right, like a journal article, and a book chapter is usually a secondary or tertiary resource which has more detail on the field rather than a single article on publishing. And if you usually publishers will not allow you to repeat something exactly the same that has been published before. You can expand on your conference paper and build on it to write a chapter, but make sure if you're reusing any content from the conference paper in your book chapter, make sure you take permissions and cite the correct source according to the permission letter.
Okay, thank you, madam. I think so. We have
reached 1 o'clock now.
Yeah.
So we would like to wind up. I think Paul will give the vote of thanks and concluding remarks.
Okay. So
just before that, anything you speakers you want to add? Any points? Anything you want to add means we will give an opportunity to the audience to speak from the speakers. Anything you want to add? Both of you, Murthy and Swati.
From my side, if the students or people who have attended this particular program, whatever they have attended, if they follow the guidelines that are given by me and Madam Swati, I think they'll get a good idea, fairly good idea. They may be doing wonderful work, but these two talks will certainly help them in getting them published with ease. Okay, good quality data should not get rejected because of bad English or bad way of making figures, bad discussion. So these two talks are really, they'll be helpful. Both of us have put a lot of effort in making the presentations, and I am sure that I request all the attendants who have listened to these two programs, kindly go through the presentation materials and read them thoroughly so that you will get a good idea. So this is what I want to tell from my side.
Thank you. And Madam Swati.
I just want to repeat what Dr. Narayan Murthy has said. The material has a lot of information. Please go through it and spend some time reviewing. If you have access to the recording, please review the recording, because I still see a lot of people. I know it's a lot to absorb. a lot of information to absorb in a short time. So listen to the recordings again, because often we see that the questions that are coming are based on what has already been presented. And these questions have already been answered. So listen to the recording again and go through the materials, and it will really help you in building your research and writing your papers and even your thesis going forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And before going to vote of thanks, we would like to present virtually. We will be coming to you in Korea or whatever portion without damage. The Mars Orbiter 1:30 is a model, and GSLV Mark 3, Mark 2 models are available here. It will be both of you have done a wonderful work. As a token of appreciation and a kind of respect to both of you, this will be coming to you as a memento from ISRO with all regards and respect. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Wonderful gifts.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
So it was indeed a special event. You want this workshop on scientific writing, which we don't get a chance otherwise to attend. So the idea behind this workshop, actually, it is Dr. P.V. Venkatakrishnan sir only. So I thank him for all the guidance and support provided for organizing this event. Coming to the inaugural session, first and foremost, I thank Sri A.S. Kiran Kumar sir, former chairman ISRO, for gracing the occasion and giving the inaugural address. And thank you, special thanks to him. I'm also grateful to Professor Alok Porwal, Professor IIT Bombay, for addressing the audience with an apt message. Coming to the speakers of this session, I don't know how to thank both of you. It was very informative and interesting. I really thank both the speakers for the nice talk and the interaction you had with the participants. I also thank all the participants who made the program a grand success. So we have got almost more than 1,000 participants, and we were also going through their feedback, whatever they have put in the chat box. It was all very interesting and very supportive, and they are all benefited from this program. That is what they have told. And we were also expecting some feedback through email from them. Since we have got very good feedback from the chat box itself, so now I am not requesting the participants to give a separate feedback in our mailbox. Finally, I also thank all my colleagues from CBPO and DISM for the excellent support for organizing this event and making it as a grand success. So thank you one and all.
Thanks a lot. Have a good day.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you, madam. Thank you very much.
Stop broadcasting you.